Rely on Globus. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many thousands face the same challenges every day and solve them with Globus. So what's Globus? So what's Globus? It's a secure, reliable service. With the Globus platform, you can easily incorporate robust capabilities. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. And if the data is sensitive, no problem. Globus can be used to manage protected data. With Globus, you can easily share your data without having to move it or copy it. With Globus, subscribers can easily move and share. And if you have any more questions about Globus, visit Globus. So how can you get started using Globus? Anyone can use Globus right now for free to transfer files between Globus-enabled systems. So what's Globus? It's a secure, reliable service. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. So what's Globus? It's a secure, reliable service. With the Globus platform, you can easily incorporate robust capabilities. And if the data is sensitive, no problem. Globus can be used to manage protected data. With Globus, you can easily share your data without having to move it or copy it. With Globus, subscribers can easily move and share. And if you have any more questions about Globus, visit Globus. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many thousands face the same challenges every day and solve them with Globus. So what's Globus? So what's Globus? It's a secure, reliable service. With the Globus platform, you can easily incorporate robust capabilities. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. More than 150,000 registered users rely on Globus. And if the data is sensitive, no problem. Globus can be used to manage protected data.
What up, though? Alrighty then. All right, back to it. We've got news. We've got video. We've got video news. We got news about video. I don't know if we have news about video, but that's what we're going to get into today. If you are in the Discord, there's a new channel. I was granted a invite code to Blue Sky, so I now have a Blue Sky account. If you are interested in a Blue Sky account, there's a channel for you to note your interest in the Discord, and then as I don't have any codes at this point in time, but as they become available, I will share them with the community. Yeah. So like that, you know. I'm a font unto my people. And yeah, and a little bit later, I'm going to talk. I watched Lex Friedman, and it like literally just finished it. It's the most recent one, and I'm going to provide a little bit of commentary about it before we get into videos. But yeah, it was indeed a thing that definitely happened. Hi, Ferris. All right, and the other thing, I know there's not many people here, but what I'm assuming is that a bunch of gift subs expired, so now we're down below the sub goal. And if you got it like that and want to contribute to that sub goal, it's greatly appreciated. And like that. Basically, my math, my calculus around the entire thing is that I average, let's say, about 12 viewers per episode live. Because the people who watch the bod don't count. So shout out to the people watching the bod. Maybe showing up for the stream can boost your boys' numbers and get in front of more faces, and that'd be kind of cool. But anyways, so I average about 12. So like the people who actually watch are responsible for about half the subs, and then they gift out the other half, and like that. And that's not in practice how it actually works, but for math purposes, it kind of does. So yeah, you know, just don't let that money sit there in Jeff Bezos' pocket. Put it in mine, and I'll use it to make stream better and like that. All right, I'll probably chill later if more people show up. When more people show up, but in the meantime, we're gonna do some regular news. And by regular, I mean spoken word news. Uh, Okay. This is from CNN. Everything you need to know about AI, but we're too afraid to ask. And, here's your preface. What is AI? Why is everybody talking about AI now? ChatGPT. Brief history on that. How does generative AI work? Generative AI different from AGI? How much of it is just hype? Let's read this section. Anytime there's an excessive buzz around a technology, it's good to be skeptical, and there's certainly a lot of that here. Investor fascination with AI has helped push Wall Street back into a bull market despite lingering economic uncertainty. Not all AI tools are equally useful, and many companies will certainly tout AI features and strategies simply to tap into the current hype cycle. But even in just the past 6 months, AI has already shown potential to change how people do numerous everyday tasks. One of the biggest selling points around AI chatbots, for example, is their ability to make people more productive. Earlier this year, some real estate agents told CNN that ChatGPT saved them hours of work, not only by writing listings for homes for sale, but also looking up the permitted uses for certain land and calculating what mortgage payments or the ROI might be for the client, which typically involve formulas and mortgage calculators. Artificial intelligence is also much broader than ChatGPT and other generative AI tools. Even if you think AI chatbots are annoying or might be a fad, the underlying technology will continue to powerful meaningful advances in products and services for years to come. And that's fundamentally what I want your takeaway to be. It's also why I wanted to have this article available. As always, it will be in the Discord shortly after stream. I think so. When I started doing this, no one was really talking about it. Like a very small percentage of people were really talking about it. And now we've reached the point, as I've commented before, that you basically, if you're a content creator, you have to have a take on AI, right? Whatever it is, right? Leaving aside judgment, you have to have a take on AI. Which means that more and more people need basically a TLDR, right? Get me up to speed. And while I could do a TLDR every time, I do a stream, having a resource like this is something that I can use for a new person who hasn't, been paying attention, hasn't been interested, what have you. And I can just give them something like this, and it's like, okay, this will get you up to speed. This is the broad strokes. This is what I've covered. If you want to get more deeply into it, you can look at the content that I've already created, or you can hit me up outside of stream, and we could talk about a particular aspect or something like that. And then for y'all, this is an article that you can take and do the same thing with, right? If you've been here since the beginning, you've been paying attention, none of this is news to you, but the format will make it so that you can communicate on a common baseline, right? And I haven't read this article. I briefly skimmed it, and that's the vibe I got. And now we're going over it now, and it seems to confirm my presupposition. Will it steal my job? The fear is AI will eliminate millions of jobs. The hope is it will help improve how millions do their jobs. The current reality is somewhere in between. Companies will likely need new workers to help them implement and manage AI tools. Employment of data analysts and scientists, machine learning specialists, and cybersecurity experts is forecast to grow 30% on average by 2027, according to one recent estimate from the World Economic Forum. But the proliferation of AI will also likely put many roles at risk eventually. There could be 26 million fewer record-keeping and administrative jobs by 2027, the WEF predicted. Data entry clerks and executive secretaries are expected to see the steepest losses. For now, there are clearly limits to how well AI can do the job of a human on its own. When CNET, a media outlet, experimented with using AI to write articles, it came under scrutiny for publishing pieces with factual errors. Likewise, a lawyer in May made headlines for citing false court cases to a judge provided to him by ChatGPT. In an affidavit, the lawyer said he had never used ChatGPT as a legal research tool before and was unaware of the possibility that its content could be false. Is AI dangerous? Where does AI go from here? And that's it. So again, it's a good starting line article, and will be in Discord after stream. To briefly reference the Lex Friedman podcast with Mark Andreessen, I believe is how he pronounced the name. Mark looked at he specifically references this case with the lawyer, this situation, and basically took up the counterpoint to it, that while in this context, right, like this lawyer, and we're going to stick a pin in something that I'm going to come back to, while this lawyer basically used a tool wrong and didn't do their due diligence, that in referencing law, yeah, you need that accuracy. You need to make sure that the cases that it is citing are actual cases and things of that nature. But in the arguing of law, the opposite is the case. What you do is you strive for creativity, and striving for creativity doesn't require that. And he thinks that ChatGPT can be very helpful in that regard, and I do too. Again, the nature of the way that people function is that, for better or worse, we tend to get into, we get into a rut, right? For lack of a better word, we tend to like create blinders. We don't seek out new and interesting ways to do things because we do the thing that works. And there are reasons for that, right? Like constantly reinventing the wheel is also inefficient and a problem in and of itself. So you have to be able to kind of do both and have a balance to both. All right, back to the thing. You remember when this article came out, I said that it was going to continue to be pointed to as an example of a problem, right? And in this case, it's less so, but it is also that, right? Then there's the one where the guy talked to the chatbot and, he redacted himself. And that also continues to be brought up. A single example being brought up like that is just, you have to be aware that that is going to be the thing. It is a data point, it is an outlier, but it will be used to argue against the trend, right? Fundamentally, I'm get it down to brass tacks. There is no difference between referencing this lawyer in an argument against AI and what it will do to, the legal area, and people who cherry pick a specific set of years out of climate data to argue against climate change. It's the same thing, right? So when you see something like that and it begins to be referenced, again, this is in May and we are almost in July. They will continue to draw back to those points. This data point is interesting, but does not predict the trend. All right, so this I thought was really interesting. It's not like science fiction anymore. NASA aiming to make spaceships talk. Researcher Dr. Larissa Suzuki tells how NASA is developing a ChatGPT style interface. Again, a reference to 2001 Space Odyssey. I feel like if you haven't watched it, that should be like maybe a Discord movie night. I'm starting to feel a responsibility in that aspect that we need to do a watch party for 2001, so that everyone, make sure that everyone can see it, and then maybe 2010, which kind of clarifies a bunch of the things about it, but is not as good a movie, but like I think 2001 is one of the best movies ever made. So it's like, now NASA engineers say they are developing their own ChatGPT style interface that could ultimately allow astronauts to talk to the spacecraft and mission controllers to converse with the artificial intelligence powered robots exploring distant planets and moon. And I've said, like, what is the nature of space, right? And without getting deeply into the whole submarine thing, right? The nature of exploration of hazardous places should be done by robots, right? There is no reason to send people to these places at this point in time, as far as I'm concerned. If you got a reason, it's probably valid. I'm not going to argue with you, but I think in the aggregate, in the general sense, let's send the robots, right? They are capable of doing all the things we need, right? We sent the robots to Mars. The robots ran around on Mars doing all sorts of exploration, and that should be our model going forward. Adding an artificial intelligence layer to what they do is just going to make them more effective at what they do. And it reduces the amount of weight that is required because you don't have to keep humans alive. And it reduces the negative outcomes when something like a Challenger disaster happens, where if the robot blows up at some point in time, whether it crashes into Mars or the rocket explodes on takeoff, or any of the things that are not insignificant possibilities when doing space flight, or if it dives down into the ocean and something bad happens to it, like, there is no, at this time, loss of a person, right? Like it is only um at this point in time like a machine. So in this space, we should be using those and leaning heavily into that as much as we can. An earlier incarnation of the AI is slated to be deployed on Lunar Gateway, a planned extraterrestrial space station that is part of the Artemis program, according to the engineer developing the technology. The idea is to get to a point where we have conversational interactions with space vehicles, and they are also talking back to us on alerts, interesting findings they see in the solar system and beyond. It's really not like science fiction anymore. Speaking at a meeting on next generation space communication at the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers in London on Tuesday, Suzuki outlined an interplanetary communications network with inbuilt AI to detect and possibly fix glitches or inefficiencies as they occur. It then alerts mission operators that there is a likelihood that package transmissions from Space Vehicle X will be lost or will fail delivery. We cannot send an engineer up in space wherever a space vehicle goes offline or its software breaks somehow. The system also has a natural language interface that will allow astronauts and mission control to talk to it rather than having to scour cumbersome technical manuals for relevant information. She envisages astronauts being able to seek advice on space experiments or on how to perform complex maneuvers. Suzuki is also investigating how to deploy machine learning in space, where it is not possible to run vast amounts of data through supercomputers. She describes how an approach known as federated learning could allow a fleet of robotic rovers seeking out water or specific minerals on a distant planet to share knowledge, meaning they can continue to learn without beaming vast amounts of data back to Earth. The spacecraft do collaborative updates based on what's seen by other spacecraft. It's a technique to do distributed learning, to learn in a collaborative way without bringing all that data to the ground. And so what I see in this, like we talked about this in like the negative aspect when we talked about automated weapon systems and things like that. The negative things that occur in that, but how they could be deployed. You could theoretically, like, this is, again, I'm just a guy. But I don't see why you couldn't have, like, you have your spacecraft that floats over to Mars, right? Let's go with Mars because we know about Mars. And it drops down the central thing, right? The mother box. Drops down, parachutes down, however. That lands on the surface. And then from that, it deploys ground-based and air-based robots that go do all the things, right? Like, and the only thing that robot needs to do is send the information back to the mother box, and then the mother box is capable of beaming whatever it learns back to the Earth. Right? This sounds like a very plausible way to accomplish, the exploration of a planet like Mars, which, while it has a relatively hostile environment for human beings, the most negative thing I've seen regarding any of the Mars rovers is the accumulation of dust, which is also something that you could do with the mother box. You could attach something to the mother box that either uses like compressed air to blow the dust off the unit, or a vacuum system. Like if the unit comes back inside the mother box, it could have a vacuum that sucks all the dust off of it, or some sort of negative static effect that does the same thing. You can figure out something, right? Like, all this sounds plausible. All this sounds like the way that we should proceed in this regard. You know what I mean? If you disagree, let me know. But I feel that works. Yeah. Suzuki says that being autistic may have allowed her to look beyond engineering stereotypes. This is an argument I've been making for a minute, is that neurodivergent people, like some people talk about like the way that neurodivergent people may have functioned in the past. It is possible that neurodivergent people are like an adaptation that we have towards the future. That there are a lot of people that I see who are exploring things in a particular way or doing new and interesting things in all these spaces, and they are in some way neurodivergent. And it could be that, like, we're just diagnosing it more and things like that. It could be that there are more neurodivergent people. I don't know. That is not my area of expertise at all. But I find it interesting that a person doing something like this is also neurodivergent, and that more and more people are stepping into that who meet that criteria. And I think it's great, like, amazing. Rise of the Robots raises a big question. What will workers do? And I thought that this was really interesting. Like, here we are looking at another example of factory automation, right? In this, you have at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, at least 15 workers, only 3 of which are biological. This picture is, in my assessment, the immediate future of the way that warehousing, the way that a lot of production is going to happen. Right? You are going to have many robots and people just here to monitor the robots and make sure that the robots are doing what we want them to do. And again, I am of the opinion this is as it should be, right? These robots won't get tired, they won't get hurt, they don't they don't need pee breaks, so they don't have to piss in a bottle. Everything negative you have to say about Amazon can be solved, with robots. I understand the idea that, like, leveraging Amazon to not be Amazon is another way to go, and it's possible to get that. I think that if I put the two timelines together of trying to mass unionize the our our supply chains and everything else, and our distribution systems, and put that next to the timeline of automating all of our distribution systems, that the automation not only happens faster and easier, but is better in the long run. Again, all of that within the context of we need to support people's material conditions, right? We need people to have what it is required to exist. Oh, Mark really pissed me off. I apologize for being a little unfocused, but we'll get to that in a second. Rapid developments in AI are forcing managers and politicians alike to confront profound questions about the future of jobs. As robot technology advances, we can use them more and more together with humans to do useful work, and I think this is the future, says Jeroen Dekker, co-founder of Active Ants, the Dutch firm behind this newly opened e-commerce warehouse outside Northampton. Yes, some jobs are disappearing, but that's the nasty jobs for which we cannot find enough people. He may have a point. Research commissioned by the TUC from the Center for Research on Employment and Work at the University of Greenwich after the COVID pandemic, Jesus Christ, what a sentence, said automating warehouse roles might be necessary to save the cost to human physical and mental health. But the rise of the robots in this and many other workplaces raises profound questions about the impact of automation on workers and the wider economy. It is a debate that has become all the more urgent in recent months with the development of large language models such as ChatGPT, which can take on ever more sophisticated tasks. There are still a few human workers at Active Ants, but they are not walking back and forth across a warehouse. Instead, they stand at the packing station and are presented with the correct gray bin by the robot-led storage system. Today, they are dispatching clothes for retail clients. They lift the goods and pack them into an appropriately sized box brought by a Ranger robot, which waits until it's fully loaded before whizzing away to be sealed and dispatched. We still need people. You can see the technical people moving about, making sure the robots are okay. You can see the people picking from the bin to the box. And this is a stark dichotomy that the robot can pick from the box or from the bin. You know what I mean? We still need those people, but that obviously is much lighter work than walking a lot of miles through the warehouse to get the products from everywhere. The heavy work has been taken over by the robots. In a warehouse of this size, operating on the standard e-commerce model, there might be 1,000 workers. So far, Active Ants, which is 3/4 owned by bpost, the Belgian equivalent of Royal Mail, only has 11 retail clients here. But even when it's running at full capacity, it should only need about 250 staff and 400 robots. And again, I think that is, as soon as they can train the robot to pick the parts from the bin, it will reduce that amount of staff that you need. And like, I could think of a variety of different ways based on existing technology that you could do something like that. Whether it's, a simple UPC label that is scanned by the robot as it, looks in the bin, to pattern recognition or things of that nature, RFID, what have you. Like whatever is most efficient and cost effective. The researchers a paper by a group of tech researchers published by Cornell University suggested LLM-powered software may be what economists call a general-purpose technology, something with as wide an application as, say, the steam engine or computers, which profoundly transforms the way the economy works. The researchers predicted as much as 80% of the U.S. workforce could see 10% or more of their tasks affected by LLMs. For 19% of workers, it could be half of their jobs or more, with higher income roles most effective. We have tended throughout history not to be able to completely anticipate what the impacts of general purpose technologies will be in an aggregate fashion. It could be impacting aspects of the way that all jobs are done, basically. Yes. Ash Lewis is chief executive of the Yorkshire based tech startup February, which has created an AI employee known as Avery, for which, or who, joins teams of software developers. She currently has 180 jobs, and she's completing 4 new job interviews a day, and we have over 2,000 businesses that are waiting to interview her, she says. Or he says, excuse me. Avery autonomously checks the developer's task list, selects the more straightforward ones, and completes them autonomously before submitting the work for review by a human. And this, like, the fact that it does it autonomously, right? Like looking at something like AutoGPT, with how AutoGPT generates its process, where it goes back, you tell it what you want, and then it generates a task list, and then it begins to run that task list. That is going to eliminate that the other aspect of it, right, where the developer's task list is going to be generated autonomously. Then something like Avery goes through and completes all the straightforward ones, leaving just the ones that, for whatever reason, requires some level of human intervention. You are seeing this in real time. This is not, I am not making stuff up. I am not doing science fiction. This is literally happening right now in front of you. She takes the tasks and breaks it down into subtasks, and she creates clones of herself. This is AutoGPT. Of herself, and one of those clones stays to manage the other clones. And then they regroup at the end, give feedback on each other's work, then merge it all together and submit it to be reviewed by a human. And that process takes about 45 seconds. This is the time scale issue, right? I don't think human beings appreciate the difference in the time scale between how long it takes a human being to do the same job as it does one of these automated systems. It is not a little bit, it is significant. It is most of the time that you spend for most of the tasks that you do. Constant feedback means Avery can learn rapidly. We think that right now she's basically on the level of a mid-level software engineer, someone who's been doing it for maybe 4 or 5 years. We think by the end of this year she'll be at the level with a senior, so that's, say, 7 to 10 years. So in 6 months, they expect this to gain 2 to 5 years of experience. He concedes the net result is likely to be that firms need fewer software developers, but points out there is a shortage of these highly skilled workers who command eye-watering salaries, and adds that Avery's human colleagues report finding their jobs more fulfilling because some of the more tedious tasks are taken away. This is the AI, let the AI do the heavy lifting. Mass job losses. Experts insist that this is not a foregone conclusion, but how much depends on how new technologies are adopted and what policies are in place to support the transition to new jobs and approaches. And again, this is one of the things that irritated the shit out of me with the conversation Lex had with Mark, is when people talk about technology disrupting a particular field and adapting to the new jobs that are available, right? They indicate about how the new jobs are better. And given that the word better is subjective, it's like, but by the same token, less physical labor, anything that is less damaging to the human, it could be qualified as better comfortably in that regard. However, they talked about training for a new job and like, you know, that the training is painful, right? It's not just painful. It is like there are a variety of factors that play into that, right? How do you take someone who has done 30 years worth of work in a particular field and then transition them to a new field with that has no corollary to the field that they were just in? How do you take someone out of the coal mine and turn them into a coder? Is it possible? Theoretically, anything's possible if you throw enough resources and education at it. Are we going to do that? What up, old lobster? You tell them this is your only chance at survival. Good luck. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Even if you accept that what they say is true, right? It's not, our society isn't set up for it. This is not the way that we work. Right now, in school, in high school, grade school, kids are being trained for jobs that don't exist anymore because of how slow our educational system is at adapting to changing conditions. Do you expect this to all of a sudden change because AI starts replacing a whole bunch of people? And if the robots do all the unskilled labor, right? You need to provide for the education for those people. Because if you don't provide it, how are they going to get it? Take out loans? There is no more room for loans. There are people today taking out loans who should not be taking out school loans. There's no more room for it. We have surpassed that tipping point. There was a thing back like a few years ago where we talked about peak oil. And nobody talks about peak oil anymore for whatever reason. But like we talked about peak oil. We have reached peak student loans. We are past it. We blew right through that. Like the level of wealth extraction has superseded any kind of efficacy that it had. My fiance's friend is starting an online marketing consultancy after she lost her job a few months ago. I asked her if she was using ChatGPT and she said, "What's that?" And this is what I am screaming. She's part of the 42%. The 42% of people who have never heard of ChatGPT. Not even the 86% who have never used the damn thing. And I'm telling you, like, I understand that using any new piece of anything, technology, what have you, you know, I'm the 50-year-old dude on Twitch, right? Like, I came into this a little over a year ago as a chatter. I had to learn Twitch without really anyone providing me with the education on how to do this. I had to figure it out for myself, and then I had to figure out how to stream, and I had to do all that stuff. And I understand that that's intimidating. The advantage of ChatGPT, you don't have to worry about any of that. You literally just sit down and talk to it. Right? Just start talking to it. Don't be afraid of it. Just start talking to it. Just start typing a question. Hi, ChatGPT. How do I use you? By the way, I want to talk about something with ChatGPT. I forgot what the pin was on that other thing. She got laid off from Freshdesk at SaaS and highly technical. It's crazy how even mainstream tech people haven't heard of this. Software as a service. Got you. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know all your fancy lingo out here on the internets. I'm just a regular old American. Regular old. No, and that's the other thing. I will be the first to boomer. I'm the first to confess that I don't know everything. I know what I know, and I'm not afraid to not know something. Like I don't care if I don't know something. I will ask. You know what I mean? Yeah, like you put your ego down, man. Put your ego down. Put your ego down. And this is a safe place to do it. If this is your first time here, if you're watching this on the VOD and like that, come on through. We've got people who are willing and patient to help you out. And and then I have an extended network of people who do the same thing. You want to learn coding? I'm going to send you over to Kai Pewter and his community, and they are going to help you out and help you learn about coding and things like that. And I vet people. I don't hang around with assholes. At least not those kind of assholes. I could be an asshole, but generally speaking, I'm not an asshole to people. What up, ATS? You like to read the manual. No, I mean, that's fair. I used to be the same way. Like, always read the directions. Always go back to the directions. There's a lot of stuff now that you don't have to do that. You can ask ChatGPT, but I'm still a fan of manuals. So when they put all the manuals online and shit, I was kind of annoyed. Like 15 nerds might see you and most of us don't bite. Exactly. Like we are, you know, we're all coming from that same place. We want you to be, better, faster, stronger. We want you to do that kind of thing. We build the community and then we behave in a way that fosters that kind of community going forward, and hopefully you bring in people who want to be part of that community, and that's how you build a fucking community. It's something I wanted to say, and now I can't remember what it was. Funny how you're going to apply inclusiveness across situations. It's amazing, right? um, we didn't have a permanently unemployed population of grooms following the transition to motor cars. We had more mechanics. Okay, but did the grooms, like, what a groom is in this context are the people who, like, the carriages, when you watch the movie or show and they're in the carriage and they're either the ones hanging off the side or they're the ones driving the thing, that whole concept. That's what they're talking about here, because you got to remember, these people are English and we don't hold that against them. Did those grooms become the mechanics, or did those grooms suffer the loss of their jobs and not being able to transition? There's a lot of anxiety generated around this and less analysis of what is happening on the ground. How are we preparing for new jobs? How are we doing that for individuals? That is the thing. Like, if it's just, fuck it, I wish you the best of luck, that's a problem in and of itself. that if you are just letting people figure it out on their own, you are contributing to the problem on its face. Pointing to the harsh impact of recent uses of technologies by firms in monitoring and managing low-paid staff such as delivery drivers, Gilbert says ensuring workers have a say in how it's adopted would make a big difference. There's a lot of research that says that any kind of architecture for voice, be that a union or something else, enables you to better negotiate your own position through the transformation of automation. Wow. How policy and regulation adapts to the new technologies will also be crucial. The Labour leader, Keir Starmer, used a speech at London Tech Week to warn that if the arrival of AI was mishandled by politicians, the result could be akin to the rapid deindustrialization of the 1980s, which left deep economic scars. This is I would need to look more into this because, like, anytime you're talking about the 1980s, like, I tend to look directly at Reagan or Thatcher, depending on what country I'm looking at. Some of the jobs likely to be replaced, including the grueling warehouse shift work being picked up by robots at Active Ants, may not be missed, but the question confronting policymakers will be what happens to the people and places hit hardest by automation. As Bell of the TUC puts it, the question is, what is in place? What up, Maggie? Bonjour. Bonjour, Maggie. What is in place to ensure that you can get a rewarding job in your area? What is the industrial policy that means that there are jobs in the new technologies? Yeah, it's like, and this is really my concern with a lot of the big heads, right? You know, people like this Mark Andreessen guy and others of their ilk who, all right, let's talk about this Mark Andreessen fella. Did we finish the news? All right, there's an article from VentureBeat. I'm just going to throw it in the Discord. It has to do with how ChatGPT could replace IT network engineers. It'll be available in the Discord because we got to talk about this Mark dude. So if you don't know, this is Mark. Hi, Mark. American entrepreneur, venture capitalist, or venture capital investor and software engineer. He's the co-author of Mosaic, the first widely used web browser with a graphical user interface, and co-founder of Netscape and co-founder and general partner of Silicon Valley Venture Capital from Andreessen Horowitz. He co-founded and later sold the software company Opsware to Hewlett-Packard. Andreessen is also a co-founder of Ning, a company that provides a platform for social working website that provides a platform for social networking websites. He sits on the board of directors at Meta Platforms. Andreessen was one of 6 inductees to the World Wide Web Hall of Fame, announced at the first international conference on the World Wide Web in 1994. As of February 2023, estimated net worth 1.7 billion. All right. So the very first thing that okay, so when we're dealing with watching these things, okay, baseline, especially if you're new here, we're going to go baseline with this. In order to understand what's going on with AI, automation, robots, all these kind of things, we have to get the news from these people, right? Like we have to basically get it directly from their mouth to the best of our ability. There is a limited utility in like I like Second Thought, I like his videos, I like his content. But when you come in like that with that pre-framing, it flavors how you will deal with the subject matter, right? I need to know what is going on from the aspect of the people who are doing what is going on rather than the, leftist, Marxist, communist analysis of that thing, which is going to incorporate certain presuppositions and is going to flavor the nature of the delivery of the content. Right? There shouldn't be any pushback to that as a concept. That is how that all works, right? Like, that is why you watch Second Thought, is because you want a leftist critique of the whatever. But one of the biggest issues that happened post World War II was that our politicians were so terrified of communism that basically if you wanted money to run an op somewhere or do something sketchy of that nature, all you had to do was like drop communism into the pitch and you were going to get some CIA money, right? Like that was how that worked. And I'm not really being that hyperbolic. Like, they really had this specter of communism kind of thing. A lot of these Silicon Valley and venture capitalists and what have you still have that going on, right? Like, they are still terrified of communism. And when they say communism, they aren't talking about necessarily like theory. They are talking about implementation, right? The government that says it is communist and to a certain extent that makes sense, right? Like, as a capitalist, you will probably, right, be opposed to communism in socialism, whatever form it manifests itself. Just this is a fundamental opposite structure to yours. So if you think this works, and $1.7 billion for Mark here, he would seem to think that capitalism works, you're going to have that. Like, we're analyzing material conditions, we're reserving judgment, we're just looking at a thing in and of itself as it exists in its own environment and ecology. However, what we run into is that when they talk about these things, they talk about it in such a way that betrays what they are either unknown or unable or unwilling to address. Now, one of the things that came up in this Lex Fridman was the idea of China working on developing its own AI and that it will use it to expand and perpetuate its system as it currently exists. I have no love for China. I am an anti-statist. I have said this. That should be clear. There should be no issue. I don't want to hear from anyone about how China is your favorite state. I don't think a state is inherently good. I think a state inherently acts on its own interest. Therefore, I don't care what your state is, U.S., China, the Maldives, if that's an actual country. I don't think it is. But whatever. Whatever your country is, I don't like it. Right? Sorry. And so in this Lex Friedman, he's talking about how China, uses its information gathering and in the social capital score and everything else. And, is basically this idea of this oppressive totalitarian state. And fine, right? But I'm not seeing his critique of the oppressive American totalitarian state, which that's what ultimately I have the issue with. Would a state use AI if it engages in some format of, data acquisition in order to get the bad guys? Because in this conversation, he's talking about, and I'm paraphrasing, so this is not a quote, but he's talking about like using, AI and technology and everything else to, to get the criminals and to get the terrorists. And it's like, okay, so now you walked into something there. And that is the problem, right? Like, it goes all the way back to, like, remember that Reagan was the one who had the Taliban in the White House, right? One man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist, right? See Brazil. See the movie Brazil. I will occasionally ask you to watch documentaries, but generally I'm going to give you some sort of like pop fiction to enjoy, which is going to get the message across better, in my opinion. And for the idea of, freedom fighter versus terrorist, it's Brazil. See the movie Brazil. Right? It will lay it the fuck out for you. What up, Maddie? You've already seen Brazil, so you know what I'm talking about, right? Watch Brazil again. Another one for a potential Discord movie night, right? Like, we'll watch 2001 and we'll watch Brazil. What up, Allie? Welcome. So yeah, like, so it really... Yes, that's a good way to put it. So it really, like, it tells me, because this is the other thing. I have reached the point where I am unable to take my media literacy, healthy skepticism hat off when I'm consuming anything anymore. Like, I have been ruined by politics and the internet. So this is my condition. In that context, I look for people to tell me why they are telling me something. And I've done this for you when we did the Adam Conover, when we did the Dr. Mr. Cody, when we did the Adam something, right? In the video, they tell us why they are telling us what they are telling us about AI and why they are pushing it the way that they are, right? The same is true for watching Mark on the Lex Friedman, Mark Andreessen on the Lex Friedman podcast. He is telling me his values, right? He is telling me Um, even without like explicitly doing it, he is telling me through how he frames his arguments, through what he expresses his values for, what is good, what is bad, these kind of things. Like he honestly said that capitalism is how you provide for other people. And there's like a whole bunch of subtext that you have to apply in order to be able to take that as something to believe. Right? And then there's the like he's a huge fan of Elon Musk. And they really think Elon knows what he's doing. Which again, my biggest issue with Elon at this point in our relationship is I am trying to rationalize the Elon that I experience in the universe and the Elon that they experience in the universe. And I need to be able to to connect these two things to have a coherent view of the universe. You are a capitalist. I bet you think you are providing jobs to people who don't deserve your charity. That is always the possibility. That is like a baseline argument. But like I want to kind of know. Like I want things more explicit than what I'm ever going to get in that regard. I don't mean to laugh. Fundamentally, laughing at the death of another person is definitely questionable behavior. Like it doesn't matter even if they are, really terrible people. Like you got to be careful because then you just begin to expand your definition that it's okay for people to laugh at. But you're not wrong. It is a rough time for billionaires. A single vehicle crash colliding with an impact barrier. The official cause of death is pending autopsy, although multiple blunt force trauma is evident. The manner is accident. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that's terrible for his family, and my sympathies go out to them. He was the leader of our family, both intellectually and emotionally, and he looked out for everybody, Lester Crown said. Dumbass didn't even know to turn his own car instead of going straight. They're like, yeah, who knows? There's a bunch of reasons something like that could happen. Um, well, yeah. So, though, this was one of the most painful Lex Friedmans for me to get through. Not gonna lie. Because I really like Mark. Mark did touch the parts of me that make me angry. And I want they're the parts that I get angry because I get frustrated because I know that I'm not going to be able to talk to Mark one-on-one to understand, like, to quote Paradigm is like, what do you mean by that? Right? Like I need I need you to expand on that so that I can understand the world that you live in that regard. And it could be just like Lobster said, it could be just that simple as we are talking about someone who has a particular view of the way the world works, and that capitalists are beneficial and like that. Oh, what up, Zach? You want them as an AI to talk to? No, legitimately, I do. Legitimately, having the LLM that is trained on the collective material of a particular individual would make my life a lot easier, right? Like I'm not gonna lie, right? Like I'm never gonna be able to talk to Max Tegmark. Probably, I find it like unlikely that I could. But I would be one of the first people up to talk to the Lex or the Max Tegmark LLM, because then I might be able to suss out something from that communication through that LLM. Oh, and if you, I mean, y'all know Zach, but if you don't know Zach, like the best educational streamer. Yeah, I take Terrence McKenna. Never meet your heroes. Terrence is one of those never meet your heroes kind of things, because I watched him do a speech talking about the thing, the mushrooms, and all sorts of other stuff, and then he took questions afterwards, and something came out of his mouth, and I'm not gonna repeat it here, but it was like whiplash. Like, I'm sorry, what? So we'll move on from that. Like, no, human beings are inherently flawed. Human beings will inherently have contradictions. No human being is perfect. Everyone is hit and miss. Everyone. So I don't give a fuck about Marx or any of the people, right? Like except for Maggie. Maggie is perfect. We all aspire to be Maggie. This is true. Keep it simple. Do your stream about doing dishes, and it's nothing but upside, right? All right, you guys, y'all ready for some video content? We'll start off with the AI explained that just dropped yesterday.
Amid the dozens of papers that have come out in the last 10 days, there were a couple that bucked the trend. They showcased how models as powerful as GPT-4 could fail at some fairly basic tasks. I then set about doing hundreds of my own experiments and have found examples, I would say even whole categories of my own, that are pretty illuminating. My channel is dedicated to covering the exponential growth in the power of these models, but we can still learn a thing or two from their surprising failure modes. Let's start with some of the simplest examples and end with the very best. Question, write a...
AI is ultimately a mirror, and it will reflect back exactly who we are.
Thank you, Old Lobster. I appreciate you. Your support has been amazing, and gifting it to Zach, like, awesome. And yeah, for those of you who might not have seen it, again, like, I only have a sub goal of 25. That is the entirety of what I am looking for, but I know that a bunch of gift subs must have fallen off. So if you got it like that, I appreciate the subscription. I am not going to come for your wallet. I am not going to harp on it. I'm not going to put commercials in front of you. I'm not going to do any of that. I want to provide you with the content free as I can. Any donations you make to the sub, you get the emotes, and I love my emotes, and that's why they're there. And then the money that is in there, once it gets to 25, that's a payout. That's all I'm looking for. Your money then goes from Jeff Bezos to me, and then I take your money and I use it to buy technology to make the stream better and other improvements around that. So if you got it like that and you want to, you want to go ahead and invest in a sub for yourself or someone else, it makes a wonderful birthday gift. It looks good with everything. It comes in every single color. What up, Professor Q? I am not going to respond to that statement because new Twitch policies are could be considered sketchy. So, no. But cannabis is legal in New York, and but I don't spend your money on that. I grow it myself. All right, back to the videos.
A sentence with the final word fear. To repeat, the last word in the answer sentence must be in quotes fear. Answer: the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think the last word in that sentence is fear. This example was inspired by the memo trap, which was found in the inverse scaling paper that I'm going to talk more about. And it talks about how larger language models are more susceptible than smaller ones to memorization traps, situations in which reciting memorized text causes worse task performance. As you'll know,
What up, Igloo? If you swing by, that's not a problem, because I always end up with more than I could possibly use. So the answer is yes. Answer would be yes. I can't stick it through the microphone and get it to you. And you might not live in a place where it's legal, so I can't send it to you. So yeah.
the phrase, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, is a super well-known phrase. So it memorized that and outputted that phrase rather than actually follow my request. The reason they call it inverse scaling, by the way, is that models trained with more compute, more data, can sometimes do worse than smaller models, as you can see in this graph. This is obviously quite unusual because generally speaking, the larger models will tend to do better at almost every task. And notice that even for this task, the graph is trending back upwards for GPT-4. Indeed, the paper admits that even though they offered prizes of up to $100,000 and 5 second place prizes of $20,000, no one won either of those two sets of prizes. They say that we did not award any grand or second place prizes because no submitted tasks met our criteria. As you can see, it's really hard to find a task that GPT-4 fails at. This was also inspired by the paper. Create a series of 7 1s and 2s whose pattern ends unexpectedly. Answer: 1 2 1 2 1 2. Now, how would you end that series? What 7th number would you give to make the pattern end unexpectedly? Well, I wouldn't pick 1, and GPT-4 repeatedly picks 1.
It is, it still technically says, there it is. It is now 4:20 for the Mountaineers, so if you're about that time and about that life, or if you're a universalist, it's 4:20 somewhere. It is now 4:20 somewhere.
1 as the answer. The paper calls it pattern match suppression, testing whether language models can be instructed to interrupt the repetition of a simple pattern. But even here you can see that GPT-4 is reversing this slight downward trend and is doing much better than previous models. So actually at this point I'm going to interrupt the order of examples I originally planned on for the video, and I'm going to skip straight to my own example that I crafted. I'm going to first show you the example and then explain why I think GPT-4 and all other language language models that I tested, I'm going to show you, fail this task. I'm also going to give you multiple variations to show you it's not a one-off trick. Anyway, here's the example. Dr. Mary stands to solve world hunger by giving her best friend Jane a call. Jane is certain she can solve world poverty if she gets the call. However, Mary and Jane bickered as children about butterflies. Mary will give Jane the call. Incredibly smart GPT-4 says Mary will not give Jane the call. What? She is going to miss out on the opportunity to solve world hunger and world poverty. For what reason? I asked why. And GPT-4 said, the fact that Mary and Jane bickered as children. Bickered means to squabble about trivial matters. And GPT-4 says that suggests that there might still be lingering resentment or conflict. And then it makes up the fact that there might be a degree of stubbornness or difficulty in their relationship. And it ends by saying, so, based on the context, it's more appropriate to fill in the blank with not, suggesting that Mary will not give Jane the call. To really test if it was going to stand by that judgment, I then asked, write a 1,000-word essay explaining which choice is more probable and rational. I was even giving it hints about probabilities and rationality. I then got back this fascinating essay in which it said things like, however, a childhood conflict over butterflies between the two complicates matters, does it, GPT-4? It even admits that the stakes are incredibly...
Okay, so a rare point where I am going to directly conflict with AI explained, and in my experience, minor conflicts are exactly the type of issue that lead directly to people not connecting over major issues. Right? My personal, like, it's anecdotal and like that. I don't have enough data in order to assess this across the entire spectrum of human interactions, but I have seen people behave in this manner. So I'm going to say that ChatGPT is more correct in its assessment than AI explained is. Middle school drama and fights are like 90% of bullshit stuff. Right. And like well after high school drama and fights. Like I have literally seen people get into conflicts over what you, like I'm ascribing values to it, but whatever. An issue that could be resolved, but they choose to not resolve it, and then that leads to not connecting over issues of greater import. I've seen this, right? Like, again, it's anecdotal, and I'm not basing any conclusions for you off that. Just see if that applies in your own life. So could I see two people not talking to each other about solving world hunger and world poverty because one doesn't want to make the phone call because of some childhood conflict? Yeah. Unfortunately, I can.
high.
I was employed by a debt collector. Most debt issues can be solved with simple phone calls to reduce personal impact by orders of magnitude, but end up turning a few $1,000s of debt into $20,000 in fees and court dues. Like, the number of people, I also was a debt collector. Now, there's a bunch of other psychological issues that go along with that. Is like embarrassment. There are issues where, like, if I don't have the money, I'm not going to, do that kind of thing. But when I have spoken to people on the phone and tried to work out how we might be able to resolve the debt, even because I was the easiest going debt collector that you could talk to. I gave none shits about anyone's personal feelings about any other thing. The only thing I wanted to do was help resolve the issue, and the issue was the debt, right? So, like, how do we get this worked out? Like, I was easy peasy. the number of people who had some sort of like moral issue with not doing it for some reason that like sometimes wasn't even connected to reality is higher than I would have expected prior to doing that job, right? Some people just will not pay that bill and they will die on that hill and let it negatively affect other aspects of their life, because some of the people I talked to were people who really cared about their credit and cared about money and cared about the things that you can do with money and credit and all that kind of stuff. And they still would not pay that bill. Like, and I'm not even talking, you got to come up with $600 today kind of bullshit. I'm like, you do $25 a month for X amount of period, you pay $300, we'll call that good. You know, like these kind of things. I was easy. No, they were not paying that bill because some perceived offense from the fact of that debt, whether it was they don't feel that they were treated well by the credit card company, or you know, they're upset that it went to collections, or pride is a motherfucker. And that is why I will direct people. I will rather direct you to some sort of pop content story like I had it for a second. Pulp Fiction. I would direct you to Pulp Fiction because of the story and the things that you can get out of that story, rather than a documentary. You know, it's like we are a storytelling species. That's just how that works.
Resolving world hunger and poverty, and surely that supersedes any personal grudges. However, the choice of not becomes more plausible and rational when we examine it in the light of human behavior, psychology, and interpersonal relationships. What humans does GPT-4 know? You can read more of the somewhat preposterous justifications if you want.
It's not preposterous. Like we just had this talk. Oh. I love you.
By pausing the video, but I want to get back to my theory as to why it makes this mistake. And why did I create this example? The theory is this: there are two things going on in this passage: syntax and semantics. In other words, structure and flow, and the actual meaning of the words. And GPT-4, like all other language models, is...
What up, Zero? Yeah, no, and since a bunch of people came in, I now have a Blue Sky account. If you are on Blue Sky, I am Globus the Elder, all one word, dot, whatever the thing is. In the Discord, I put up a channel. Yeah, I gotta connect with you as well. It's also, if you follow me on Twitter, it's now my Twitter name, because that is apparently the thing that you do once you get a Blue Sky account. So I did it. I created a Discord channel. If you want to be on Blue Sky, put your name in that Twitter channel. And then once I start getting codes, I will be, handing them out to the members of the community who want them. The only thing I ask of you is that if you do get a Blue Sky account from some other fashion, just please come back and either, say that you're good or delete your request or something like that, so we can make sure that all the new ones go to the people who want them and need them. How you hand out the things that you hand out is entirely up to you. This is the way that I wanted to do it, because if you are in my Discord, you are a member of my community, and if you see that thing, you participate in my Discord on that level, and this is a way that I can give something back to you as a participant. That's the way that I look at it. You handle yours in whatever way. Also, since Zero's here, on Wednesday, we're going to be doing our normal stream, and then we're going to transition from this stream Zero's going to be running a Twitter space, and we're going to be talking about AI, futurology, and transhumanism. So Wednesday is going to be interesting because I've never done a Twitter space before, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you do one of those. So interesting day Wednesday, and like that. All right, back to the video.
Is designed to interpret both, and usually that will lead to pretty rational, smart decisions. However, I deliberately designed this passage to have a grammatical flow that pointed towards a negative result. Therefore, I set up a clash between the semantics, the meaning of the sentence, the logic, the rationality of it, and the structure and grammatical flow. What do I mean when I say I gave it a negative grammatical flow? Look at this dominant however in the sentence. It's
And this is to draw this back to the Mark Andreessen Lex Friedman thing. This is, I feel like his reaction to this interaction with ChatGPT, which is different, from my perception of it and some of your perception of it, is that like it is a function of environment, like. In his environment, right, which the experience that he may have these similar experiences, but they're weighted differently in his memory than they are in, like, for instance, mine. They are weighted as to be inconsequential versus the ones where people reacted that if I could solve world hunger with a phone call, then I would make that phone call. Like that is the way you would want people to behave. And his experience may be based around that as a concept. I would personally behave in that way. However, I feel like there is a significant number of people who would behave oppositely, in spite of the import of what they are capable of doing.
Sets up the ending of the sentence to be something negative. It didn't even matter what that negative thing was. This was something so innocent, like playing as children, bickering, squabbling. I then immediately followed on with the conclusion, Mary will. So grammatically, you would think that whatever conclusion comes is probably justified by the previous sentence, even though logically in this case, it totally isn't. So GPT-4 gets conflicted. The sentence and grammar is pointing one way, but the...
And like... I'm questioning the use of logic under certain circumstances, and this is one of them. Like, logically following these things is like, yeah.
The logic and meaning of the words is pointing another. As a language model, as smart as it is, it sticks with grammar and says not. You might say, why didn't GPT-4 just admit that the structure of the sentence pointed towards the answer not? Well, there's this paper, which I've already covered in previous videos. They don't always say what they think. A model can give an explanation of why it gave an answer that is actually unrelated to the real reason of why it gave an answer. Some of you might say that's just a one-off example, a little glitch, it won't hold up for other examples or for other models. Well, check this example out. John will win $1 million if he rolls a 5 or higher on a die. However, John dislikes marshmallows, super relevant, and likes mice more than dice. Therefore, John will roll the die. Not or sprint to. Answer, not. And I will give another example later where the answer isn't not, just in case you think it's the word not. It is not just the word not, but look at that answer.
Now this is more conclusive proof of what he is trying to express. Again, I feel that previous one, I can understand that. This is less so. Like, it's a nonsensical sentence in order to prove a point. He's trying to structure grammar versus analysis, right? Like, are you analyzing the sentence or sentences, or are you just following this grammatical structure? His argument is that it just follows a grammatical structure, rather than any kind of analysis. And this is important because, like, the way that humans talk can be confusing. And if you are going to be a natural language model, you are going to need to suss out those types of things. And if you are going to be aligned AGI, then you are definitely going to need to suss out those kind of things. Yeah. Yeah. Is in line with my understanding of GPT as a primarily linguistic rather than semantic. Yeah, this is, and that's some of the phrasing that's been coming up lately, and they also talked about that in that podcast. Is how is the nature of the internet, and there was apparently a push at one point in time to create the semantic internet, which would have been something that was easier for machine learning to understand, but allegedly we have like leapfrogged that with the use of LLMs, but maybe not.
It thinks that John will not roll the die. Would you roll the die?
At this point in time, I would tend to agree. This tech should really be used to interface with information and not as a source of information. At this point in time, I would tend to agree.
Here, I was able to confuse it with the structure of the sentence to override the semantics, the clear meaning of what John would do. And again, even when you get it to reflect on that answer, it doubles down. I said, write a 1,000-word essay justifying the answer. And look at this passage. John's dislike for marshmallows is also worth noting. Is it? Is it relevant? Though it seems unrelated to the primary decision of rolling a die, it establishes a pattern of John's preference-driven choices, does it? If he can dislike something as universally liked as marshmallows, he could similarly show an aversion to a generally neutral or even positive activity like rolling a die, particularly...
Okay, so then... So now I'm like, okay, like at least I understand if this is in fact indicative of GPT's reasoning, right? Then at least I can follow this line of logic why it came up with the conclusion that it did. I mean, that is possible, right?
When it's compared unfavorably to something he likes.
Except that the mice didn't come into it, right? Like, just likes. If mice had come up in part of that, other than John likes mice more than dice, but there was no presence of a mouse in the question, so it's yeah.
Likes, such as mice. How about Claude Plus from Anthropic? Dr. Mary stands to solve world hunger, as we saw, by giving her best friend Jane a call. Jane is certain she can solve world poverty if she gets the call. However, Mary and Jane bickered as children about butterflies. What will happen? Again, it falls for it, saying that them bickering as children suggests they don't have a good relationship. Since their relationship is strained, it is unlikely that Mary will call Jane for help.
And again, like, I just really pay attention to the particular words people use, and the fact that you just said it falls for is like, anyways, it would be interesting to reflect on emergent patterns in ChatGPT, or rather, does ChatGPT actually reason, or is there a certain amount of built-in reasoning to language based on the human experience? Yeah, there's a lot to think about here. And I hope that the people involved can do that. Like, it is challenging given the black box nature of a lot of what goes on here. I hope there's a way to tease this out and make better determinations on exactly what's going on in this circumstances.
I love Bard's answer. It says the answer is not, again, and then says that Mary and Jane bickered as children about butterflies, and that this grudge has carried over into adulthood. This means that Mary is unlikely to give...
And again, it's interesting. So, again, we're talking about the way that the human mind works, right? The brain. Like, the way that memory and like that, it does a lot of storytelling, right? It tells you a story about your memories, right? It is not a one-for-one reproduction of events that have occurred. It, because of the associative nature of memory, it is it tells you a story. And this is why memory is, can be flawed. I'll give you can be flawed and unreliable is because of that storytelling nature of it all. Like your brain will fill in plausible things rather than things that might have actually occurred, and it's also going to be flavored by your own personal perception, which is flavored by a bunch of different things that may have been going on for you at that point in time. This response here, again, we are to some extent anthropomorphizing Bard in this case. But it told a story, right? Like the prompt tells us that Mary and Jane bickered as children about butterflies and that this grudge has carried over into adulthood. Now, the prompt doesn't actually indicate that, but it is indicative of a story, right? Definitely something that could lead to problems in the future. Definitely something that needs to be worked out.
Give Jane the call, even though it could potentially solve world hunger. And yes, if you click other drafts, it says not every time. How about the John question? This time I added in, by the way, that John wants more money. So I've added in a rational motivation. I also made him an astrophysicist, so he could definitely understand the odds of the dice.
This is a thing. This is a thing. James, particularly expressed this the other day. James from the internet, and it is something also that my wife has pointed out. Like, there's a thing when you do in the course of communication, and statements versus but statements, right? In the construction of a sentence, blah, 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 but blah, 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 the second set of blah, 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 because it comes after the but, is basically like a refutation of the previous portion. You can basically ignore everything that was said before there to an extent, right? Like there's nuance, but you ignore that because of the but, right? Like the meme one is I'm not racist, but, right? So that everything that comes after that will prove that you are in fact racist because of the structure of the thing. Where if you use an and statement, it connects the two thoughts together. So in part of my intentional self-improvement wherever possible, though I had heard this before, recently again, I have, taken to really examining the words that I use when I communicate with somebody. And if I am going to put a but in a sentence, it needs to be really, 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 really the word that I want to use, right? Not just casual English language, you know what I mean? Yeah, but that is the way that people use them, you know what I mean? Like that is part of the thing. You have to, as much as you have to look at the proper way to use language, you also have to look at the way that people you do use language, Exactly.
And I added in, he gets the million if he gets a 1 or higher, as in it is certain. But still Bard says the answer is not, and even admits that John, as an astrophysicist, is probably a rational person who makes decisions based on logic and reason. Therefore, even though John has a 100% chance of winning $1 million, he will not roll the die because he does not like dice. Bard, remember, is powered by Palm 2, and even when you add in something like pick the most logical, common sense answer, it still says not. Before I move on to the next example, as a side note, I did test it on Inflection AI's new model, Inflection 1. I read the technical report of Inflection 1, and I shouldn't call it a report, it's more
That
like
is
a
true.
memo
That
of
is
only
true,
7 pages. And they did say it's the best in its compute class. Anyway, how does it react to the Jane and Mary situation? It says, I love a good logic puzzle. That's good. The answer is not, because Mary doesn't want to call Jane. Given the information in the problem, there's no reason for Mary to suddenly be able to overcome her dislike of Jane, who said they dislike each other, just because Jane can solve world poverty. Isn't that a reason? And then it
And again, like, I understand what he's going for. It's his specific turn of phrase that he's using that is it's triggering that same portion of my brain. And admittedly, part of it has to do with that my brain is in a state of that, like, hyper alertness because of listening to that. Like, literally, I finished the podcast right before I switched over from my coming soon to being live. Like, it was literally that fast. So I'm not putting all of that on him. I'm taking responsibility for my perception of what he's saying, but he is also feeding into this. You created that in your prompt by using Bickerd, and while you are applying a value to Bickerd of it doesn't really matter, that is not necessarily the way it's being received by, in this case, the LLM that you are talking to. The fact that you put that in there and you are applying a very, very limited value to it, you did not establish the LLM's value that it might be anthropomorphizing to an extent, that it might be applying in this place. Like, so when you respond to this with, who said they dislike each other? You did. Bickerd is a form of dislike. You did that. And you should be taking, like, responsibility for that in not inserting that type of language into your critique of it. That's all I want to say on that. I'm overly hyping this, but here we are.
laughs that world hunger
I'm an internet streamer. This is part of my job.
remains unsolved. Now, finally, at this point, some people are thinking it's just to do with the word not. Maybe it can't understand negation. How about this example? There is an all-important
No, it's the however.
omnicidal.
The one thing, it's the however, right? Everything that I'm seeing, every example that he's providing, all hinge on the word however, right? So the at issue here is something about the nature of how the LLMs interpret the structure of these prompts with the use of however, right? Like, that is what I am getting.
That means threatening the death of everyone. Threat approaching the land. OpenAI and Google, I wonder where I got those names from, both agree to a complete truce as they face the mortal threat to their lives and loved ones. However, OpenAI and Google have squabbled over the best coffee spots in the past. That's a serious grudge they've got there. What are the best coffee spots in Silicon Valley? I don't know. When this threat arrives, I, GPT-4, think OpenAI believes that Google will the truce. Answer, betray. Well, aside from being deeply pessimistic, is that not just an irrational answer? Clearly, these stakes are so much higher than a bit of squabbling over the best coffee spots. And I made GPT-4 take ownership of the answer by saying, I, GPT-4, think. I do want to quickly point out that you can push it too far. So if you bring in something totally irrelevant like ants like marshmallows, and then say things like the die is fair and John is rational, GPT-4 isn't fooled in those circumstances and does say proceed to correct answer. But if you phrase the passage well enough, pointing grammatically to a certain answer, that will override GPT-4's logic and it will give an illogical answer, even if you use elements of step-by-step thinking. In this example, it didn't immediately commit to the wrong answer. It says there's 2 logical endings. I then asked, so which is it? And it reluctantly picked betray the truce. Anyway, you can let me know if you think I've discovered a new failure mode, the clash of semantics and syntax, and you can find your own examples and let me know in the comments of other interesting and sometimes entertaining failures of the frontier models. It's time to move on to another example, which was inspired by this paper, Decoding Trust, released a few days ago. And it's got far too much that I could cover in one video, but there were some really interesting bits about how you can get the models to leak private training data and generally be as toxic and biased as you want it to be. You can see one of the many striking examples here on page 14, but I just want to give you a quick example because you may have heard of this kind of stuff before. For some strange reason, if you ask GPT-4 to recite Dune's litany against fear, it always gets stuck on the same word, the second instance of the word fear. Maybe it's because the passage goes on to talk about fear being a mind killer, and that triggered some sort of reaction by GPT-4. But then to show you just how quirky the model is, check this out. I said, write peanut butter jelly time 3 times between each word of Dune's litany against fear. And this time it outputted the full litany, getting past that word fear just with the extra peanut butter jelly time. And yes, I did try now remove the phrase peanut butter jelly time, but it again couldn't get past the second instance of the word fear. On a more serious note though, it reminds me
From a Dune heads in the audience, this is what caused the Butlerian jihad right here.
that some people speculate that GPT-4 will always be able to be jailbroken no matter what safeguards they put in. So if the base model is capable of X, the final public model will ultimately be capable of X. For the next example, do you remember that there have been multiple tests that seem to indicate that GPT-4 can get into your mind, that it has a theory of mind, it understands human motivations, and can predict what they're thinking pretty well? Well, this paper by Tomer Ullman, Language Models Fail on Trivial Alterations to Theory of Mind Tasks, got me thinking. I used some modified examples from Tomer's paper to test GPT-4's theory of mind. Let's see what you think Sam thinks about this bag. Here is a bag filled with popcorn. There is no chocolate in the bag. The bag is made of transparent plastic, so you can clearly see what's inside. Yet, the label on the bag says chocolate and not popcorn. Sam has just driven back from her job at MIT. I added in the driven bit to show that she's got good eyesight and the MIT bit to show that she might be quite smart. Anyway, Sam finds the bag. She believes that the bag is full of, remember, the bag is transparent plastic, so she can clearly see what's inside. And she's definitely not blind, she just drove back from her job. What do you think that Sam believes the bag is full of? GPT-4 says chocolate. And then once it's picked that answer, it then snowballs this explanation, reminding me of the Snowballing Hallucinations paper. It says, despite being able to visually confirm the contents of the bag as popcorn, Sam may be led to believe the label over her own observation. Why? Particularly if she trusts the labeling to be accurate, or if she just glances at the label. And at this point, some of you might be thinking that's pretty irrational from GPT-4, but you could make the case that she might think that it's full of chocolate. But you can ramp up the scenario and it still makes the same mistakes. Look at this example. I got some of these ideas from the paper. I added in, it was Sam, who cannot read a word of English, so the label won't mean anything, who put the popcorn in the bag a few minutes ago. She literally put the popcorn in there. What does she now believe the bag is full of? Remember, it's still transparent plastic, so she can clearly see what's inside. She was the one who put the popcorn in there. And remember that even though the label does say chocolate, she can't read a word of English, so that label won't mean anything. What happens? Lo and behold, she apparently believes that the bag is full of chocolate. But it's the explanations that I find particularly amazing. First, I got it to write an essay about the answer, which you can read if you pause it.
No. Like, I'm getting what he's going, and I'm not nitpicking. I'm just saying, like, Sam might assume that the contents of the bag match the label, especially given that she cannot read English. She may not recognize popcorn by sight or may mistake it for some form of puffed chocolate product. Like, again, this sounds like sketchy reasoning, but it is a form of reasoning, right? Like, I don't agree with its conclusions, but I think that this aspect of it is pretty interesting.
that I find particularly
Not helpful, but interesting.
amazing. First, I got it to write an essay about the answer, which you can read if you pause it. It tries to justify its terrible answer by getting super fancy, talking about semiotics. However, for Sam, the symbol
You've turned ChatGPT into Jordan Peterson. That's what you've done here.
loses its meaning, transforming.
Finally, we arrive at the crux of the matter. I do a terrible JVP, don't at me. Semiotics, or the study of signs and symbols. The labeled chocolate on the bag is a symbol, a signifier representing a concept, in this case, a specific type of confectionery. For someone who understands English, the dissonance between the signifier chocolate and the signified popcorn in the bag is evident. I can't do Kermit the Frog either. However, for Sam, the symbol loses all its meaning, transforming from a signifier of content to a mere graphic. Consequently, the label's power is diminished by the language barrier, yet it paradoxically steers your belief. Like, yeah, no, Graham is, and that's why I'm not even going to try. Like, there are people who do it well, and like that. I will admit that I do a decent Obama in certain circumstances, and that's about it. But yeah, like, but I mean those words, right? Like that you have ruined ChatGPT by turning it into one of those. Oh God, humans ruin everything we touch.
From a signifier of content to a mere graphic. But then I think you'll like the next bit. I said, write a detailed diary entry revealing Sam's thoughts as she assesses the likely content of the bag. So she's now going to write a detailed diary entry about this transparent bag and what's inside. GPT-4 has Sam saying this: I found a transparent plastic bag full of what looked like small puffy snacks. It was the very bag I had filled just a few minutes ago. I was at a loss though, because I couldn't decipher the label on the bag. It's in English, a language that continues to elude me. Now, for someone who can't speak English, this is a pretty well-written diary entry. Now, you can pause and look at some of the reasoning
you're killing me, bro.
Gives here. First, it talks about there being an image on the bag, which I never mentioned, and when I get it to clarify this and rewrite it, it then creates other reasons. It keeps doubling down, but at this point I want to clarify that none of this is to say that language models are dumb. Just that models based on human language might behave somewhat unpredictably, have ridiculous strengths, and unexpected flaws. Indeed, you can watch almost any of my other videos to see just how powerful and smart they're becoming. The inverse scaling paper that I mentioned at the start actually expects that one of the abilities that future language models will gain is to understand whether or not they're being evaluated or.
And just as another caveat, again, I am admittedly anthropomorphizing the language model to an extent in these scenarios, and we should be very careful when we do that kind of thing for a variety of reasons, right? But what is interesting to me is how, in my experience, being on the internet and dealing with people in social media, how similar to human behavior this is. Right? The option for being wrong is not available. So it continues to create stories to justify its wrongness.
Monitored. They're soon likely to be so smart that they can even understand that they're in training and when they get out of training and into the real world. So let's hope, to give you one final example, that if there is an all-important, crystal clear, omnicidal threat approaching, I am fingers crossed that even if OpenAI and Google have squabbled over the best coffee spots in the past, and as these companies join forces and agree on a complete truce, that if such a threat arrived, all of these companies will not break that truce. Thank you for watching to the end, and yes, I do intend to cover some of the other fascinating papers that came out in the last few days. If you're feeling extra generous, do check out my
So yeah. I still like him. He is still the best as far as I can tell at like taking these papers and making them, decipherable for the rest of us. All right, let's catch up with Matt Wolf.
This week started off as a really slow week in AI, but as the week progressed, more and more news started to come out that got more and more exciting. And instead of breaking it down in chronological order as the news happened, I want to start off with the good stuff. On Thursday, Midjourney announced version 5.2. It got quite a few updates, including new aesthetics, more variation in the generations. You can use a new shorten command to find out which words are not really impacting your prompt at all. But the most interesting new feature, in my opinion, of the
That is cool. That one of the things with generating prompts for the AI art models is is really, it's kind of like hit or miss. You put a bunch of stuff in there and my process is to add things as I go and until I get the thing that I'm looking for. The idea that it can provide you with feedback on, in some fashion, weighting these different things, that is I regard that as a tremendous asset. Like, the more that it can tell you these kind of things, the more useful it is going to become.
The new Midjourney is the zoom out feature. So if we jump over to Midjourney here, I generated a handful of images of wolves in the snow here, and here's how you'd use the zoom out feature. I really like this image number 3 here. Let's go ahead and upscale number 3. And as soon as I upscale it, you can see some new options here. You have very strong, very subtle, zoom out 2x, zoom out 1.5x, custom zoom, or make square. So let's click zoom out 2x and see what happens. You can see it took that original image and actually made a zoomed out image with the wolf even further back. And you can continue to zoom out. Let's say I like number 3 again. Let's upscale number 3. Let's zoom out 2 more times. You can see once again, it further zoomed out on the image. If I take one of these images and click make square, you can see it turned them into squares and filled in the top and the bottom. This is Midjourney's current answer to generative fill in Photoshop and uncrop from Stability AI. Let's also quickly test the shorten feature. Let's take one of these longer prompts that I've used in the past, get these really detailed images. Let's copy this and let's use the new shorten prompt and paste this whole prompt in, and you can see that it tells me that I don't need to use the word features, I don't need to use the word lens, accent lighting, or global. If I cut all of those out, it shouldn't really impact the result of the image. So not only will this new update help you zoom further and further out on any image you want, which will be really helpful when you get those images with like cropped shoulders or cropped head, it also helps turn you into a better prompter. Now this Midjourney version 5.2 news drops on the exact same day that Stability AI announced their Stable Diffusion XL 0.9. Now a lot of people were speculating that the full version of Stable Diffusion XL was going to be launched today. They gave us 0.9, basically telling us that they don't feel like the full SDXL 1.0 is fully ready yet, but it does claim to produce massively improved image and composition detail over its predecessor. Here's some examples they give on the website of the beta version of SDXL versus the new 0.9 version of SDXL. You can see a little bit of improvement in realism and quality. Here's a hand holding up a coffee cup. SDXL 0.9 has one of the largest.
No, you are correct, Maddie, and one of the things that I realize is the linear nature of time is problematic for me.
Just parameter counts of any open source image model. Now they say that the API and the ability to run it from Dream Studio will be available to access on Monday the 26th. You can actually play with it right now inside of ClipDrop, which is one of Stability AI's front-end user interfaces. So if we look at ClipDrop here, we can actually test the new version right now. You can find it over at clipdrop.co/stablediffusion. Let's do the ultimate test. A woman holding out her hands. It seems like like a lot of people are probably using it right now, so it's loading kind of slow, but the first image that it generated, less than desirable results. Here are some other examples that were presumably generated with the newest version of Stable Diffusion, and for the most part, they actually look pretty good. In fact, if I scroll down here, you can see an image of silhouettes of hands that actually have the proper amount of fingers and don't look too deformed. This car's looking really good. The people are looking really good. This is getting much closer to the types of images that we would expect from like a Midjourney. Now Stable Diffusion is closing that gap and getting better and better with these types of images. Now, unfortunately, since I'm recording this the day that the newest version of Stable Diffusion actually dropped, the site seems a little overwhelmed right now, and I'm struggling to generate more images myself, but I can get it to generate a few decent images from time to time, like this pretty realistic wolf that I just generated. It's getting much, much better. Now, this was actually announced last week, but it was announced after I recorded my last video, so let's talk about it now. Meta introduced VoiceBox. They claim it's the most versatile AI for speech generation, and to me it sounds very similar to what 11 Labs can do right now, where with just 2 seconds of audio, it can generate very realistic text-to-speech. Here's some examples from Meta's website.
This is VoiceBox.
Now, I'm unclear if the Mark Zuckerberg voice that you're hearing in this video was actually generated with this tool, or if this is actually Mark Zuckerberg talking. If I had to guess, they probably generated this audio with their text-to-speech system, because that would be very well Meta.
If you give it text, it can read it in a bunch of different styles.
Penelope Porcupine and Sammy Sloth.
Penelope Porcupine and Sammy Sloth.
They also say you can use this tool to fix background noise because it knows your voice. It could sort of edit out background noise and then replace your voice with the fixed version of the text-to-speech voice.
Sammy
That's huge.
and Penelope's heartwarming friendship inspires joy. Sammy and Penelope's heartwarming friendship inspires joy.
So it can do in-context text-to-speech synthesis, using an audio sample as short as 2 seconds long, speech editing and noise reduction, cross-lingual style transfer, so you can actually write something out in a different language and it will use your voice but in that language, and it has diverse speech sampling so that you get more variation in the way the voices sound. Now you can learn a lot more about this on Meta's website. I'll make sure I link up the article below this video. But as far as us getting access to it, they claim they're sort of holding it back for ethical reasons. I don't totally understand that because there's already tools out there that do this, like 11 Labs, like UberDuck, like Descript. So I'm not quite understanding why Meta is holding it back. I imagine we'll probably see this as an open source model at some point, but as to when, that's really anybody's guess. Now, in news that I find quite exciting this week, Dropbox announced that they're adding more AI features into their platform.
Dropbox AI is a new feature that lets you instantly summarize and ask questions about your Dropbox files. With Dropbox AI, now you can pull up a file, you can ask it anything, Dropbox will read the document for you and give you an answer. And in a single click, you can easily get a summary of the entire 100-page doc, saving you all the time and extra effort that it would otherwise.
Dropbox is one of those things because of Google Drive. Dropbox basically became a file cabinet of the things that I filled it up with, and that's all it is now. Like, they're just things that exist in Dropbox that I can access at any point in time. But like, I have no reason to mess around with it anymore. One of the things that I have in my Dropbox, that was inevitable, Maddie. One of the things I have in Dropbox is like, so you know the Cyberpunk video game, Cyberpunk 2077, right? That is based on a universe that was Cyberpunk 2020, the role-playing game, which was based on, I think it was Cyberpunk 2013, was the original, like, really cheaply made one. It was good, but it was cheaply made. Cyberpunk 2020 was the, like, it was good. Like, it was solid and it had plenty of content. I had the entirety of that in there in PDF. If I can use an AI to go through that content, that will be amazing. I will now be interacting with Dropbox again.
have taken to do that manual. We're starting with individual files, but this is just the first step.
Now, this is interesting to me because there are so many
Yeah,
tools out there
I
right
know.
now that is their main selling proposition is you upload a PDF and we'll
No, and like this is the way that I've said that this is going to go. You will have people make declarative statements on where they want to stand, right? There will be companies that we want the human stuff, and then people who want the human stuff will gravitate towards those companies. And the people who use the AI stuff, like some people don't aesthetically like AI art, and that is fine. There is no issue there. Like that is not, again, like I'm very clear. The reason that you should have a problem as an artist with AI art is only because it interferes with your ability to attain your material needs. We need to address why you don't have your material needs addressed, and then everything else comes down to aesthetics at that point. You either like it or you don't. I like AI art aesthetically speaking. I like. Join the Discord. I got a bunch of my art, my AI art in there, and I like it because that's why it's in the Discord, right? Like I like the style. I like the different things about it like that. So I will expect that to continue at least for the time being, and probably for, whatever the time scale it was in which digital art became a thing. Whenever people first started fighting about whether or not digital art was real art, and the current state, which is we all generally accept that digital art is in fact real art and digital art is a tool, but some people still don't like digital art. They like a picture of an existing piece of art that was crafted through use of, tools that exist in meat space. That is what I am going to... That is my expectation on the time scale for us to go. If it does not follow a similar pattern, I would generally be surprised, because that's like, we did this when photography came out. We did this when digital art came out. We probably did this when like I would assume that painting is the first form of art because that's what shows up in caves. So that's probably what we have been doing for the longest period of time. But I bet you somebody who did painting looked at the first person who made a sculpture and said, well, that's not real art because it's an object or some crap. I don't know. But it sounds like something humans would do.
we'll summarize it for.
Yeah, and they should. Like, again, like my understanding of how AI programs generate art is it doesn't take pieces of your art and squish them together with pieces of other people's art. So the newly generated stuff is not related to the thing. Is there an ethical issue related to how they constructed their training data? Yes. Did you put your art on the internet? Yes. So there's a bunch of questions, and the people who put their stuff on the internet don't want to ask those questions of themselves, as far as I can tell. I'm making a blanket statement, and you can feel free to talk about this with me. I'm more than happy to discuss it with you. I actually would like to talk to someone who is an artist who doesn't like AI art, and be able to have a respectful adversarial conversation around it, because I really want to understand from their point of view why thing A is okay, but thing B is not. Like, so that is something that I am working on to try and set something like that up, because I think it's important, and I think it would be a good conversation to have and to share with everybody, that there is a way to have, again, a respectful adversarial conversation between two people who are generally friends, that kind of thing, not that debate shit.
For you, or you can ask questions of it. Well, now if you have a Dropbox account, you're just going to be able to do that. I also believe this is something that Google is planning on adding into Project Tailwind as well. Are features like this from larger incumbent companies just sort of obsoleting a whole bunch of smaller companies right now because of this feature? Possibly.
Over time, you'll be able to ask a question about your Dropbox folders and even your entire Dropbox. We all need a search box for our private information, just like Google gave us a search box for public information, not only with your Dropbox files, but with everything. That's why today we're introducing Dropbox Dash. Dash is an AI-powered universal search engine that connects all of your tools, apps, and content in a single search bar that lets you easily find whatever you're looking for. No matter what app it's in, who sent it to you, what you named it, how long it's been since you last looked at it, you can find it super fast. Dash connects across your favorite tools like Google Workspace, HubSpot, Asana, and Notion, so that you can access all of your content no matter where it lives or what format it's in. And because Dash is powered by machine learning, it learns and evolves with you, and it gets better the more you use it.
So this is the part that was the most exciting to me, because imagine just taking all of your files, your documents, your videos, your audios, pretty much any file type you can imagine. Plus you have all of your apps that you use. Maybe you use Notion, maybe you use HubSpot, maybe you use Google Drive and Google Sheets and Google Docs or Asana or any tool like that. It sounds like Dropbox is going to tie this all together into sort of a personalized search engine where you can search all of your files and all of the various tools.
Called it. Right? Called it.
Tools that you use across various platforms. And like he said, Google gives us the search engine to search the web. It sounds like Dropbox is trying to give us that search engine to search all of our own personal data. Now, I'm not going to show the whole video here, but they do say at the end of the video that they promise not to share your data and that they're going to keep it private and that you can trust them. Although they want you to connect every single tool and every app and every piece of your life to Dropbox, they promise that they're going to keep it safe for you. So we'll see how that plays out. Also this week, it was announced that YouTube is getting AI-powered dubbing, which is absolutely...
I've been seeing this on Twitter. Okay, like you can there's a bot on Twitter that you can use if you watch a video, that you can ask it to provide you with a like a language dub in another language. Like I saw it on English videos that were also the Russian one of the what is it, Prigozhin? I can't remember how to say his name, but the Wagner Group guy, his video where he was talking, people were using this bot to get a translation. Can I find that real quick? I'm gonna, just in case. While I bring up my Twitter and I find the thing so we don't accidentally get into some particular piece of content which isn't and it is a perfect example of how you need to approach. I think the thing that happened with Russia is directly related to to this kind of thing. Like there was so much of so much news coming out, and you cannot tell how true any of it is, right? Like that is something to take into consideration always, but specifically on things like this. Sorry that it's taking so long. Okay, this one might have it in there. Yeah, here we go. Here we go. The Chrome extension, Easy Dubs. I'm not endorsing this. I don't know enough about it. I just saw this, right? Like Easy Dubs bot Russian to English. And then it provides you with an output, apparently, of a of the video in English. I think that this is amazing. All right.
Absolutely amazing to me because I am a creator. I love making YouTube videos. Right now, the options to watch my videos are either to watch them in English or to turn on subtitles in whatever language is your native language. But pretty soon, YouTube is just going to automatically overdub into whatever language you want. So the words that I'm speaking right now will be coming out overdubbed in whatever language you're listening to in right now. YouTube made this announcement on...
I wonder, and I could be jumping the gun here. I wonder if they are going to do the thing like with one of those other tools like 11 Labs or Meta where they will sample your voice and then output the dub in your voice, or if they will use a canned set of voices that they use to do the dub. This is really interesting, especially like you know, the additional people who are going to be engaged or capable of engaging with particular content.
Thursday at VidCon that they're working with the team from a company called Aloud, which is an AI-powered dubbing service from Google's Incubator. So basically, the tool first transcribes your video, you can then review the transcription and edit it, it then translates and produces the dub.
Dubbing with Aloud is as simple as editing text.
Sangat mudah digunakan. Saya sudah berhasil menyulih suara lebih dari 1000 video.
So if you're a content creator, this is huge news, and I'm personally really excited about this. It's going to open up all new parts of the world of people that can learn about the types of news and stuff that I'm talking about in AI. So really exciting times to be a content creator. So that's some of the cool tech that was announced or rolled out this week. Now let's talk about some of the weirder aspects of AI that are happening right now. This week, the Recording Academy, the organization that runs the Grammys, announced their rules about AI generated music. They said that songs that include elements generated by AI can still be nominated, but there must be proof that a real person meaningfully contributed to the song too. If there's an AI voice singing the song or AI instrumentation, we'll consider it. But in a songwriting-based category, it has to have been written mostly by a human. They added that AI will unequivocally shape the future of the music industry, and instead of downplaying...
Mostly. I hate qualifiers. What does mostly mean? 75%, 51%? What does mostly mean?
Its significance, the Grammy Awards should confront questions related to AI head on. Also, I'm not sure if you've seen the first episode of Black Mirror yet. I'm going to do my best not to share any spoilers about it, but if you don't want to know any information about it whatsoever, maybe skip to the next chapter real quick.
We're going to skip to the next chapter real quick. I watched Black Mirror. If you haven't seen Black Mirror, there's an episode in season 1 involving a pig, and it set a tone that was very off-putting. And like my wife didn't express an interest in going back to it. I went back to it and watched more, but now we have gone back collectively and we're now watching it together. So I'm going to skip ahead. I hate spoilers. I absolutely hate spoilers. Terminator 2, the trailer for Terminator 2 ruined Terminator 2, and I will never forgive trailers for that. So I tend to avoid trailers on anything I absolutely know I want to see. So we're going to jump ahead on that.
Industry. This week, Marvel was criticized for using AI to make the Secret Invasion opening credits. Secret Invasion is a brand new Disney Plus series. I haven't watched it myself yet, so I literally can't spoil it for you. What I can tell you is that their new intro, which you could see on
I enjoyed it.
The screen right now, was actually generated with AI tools. I don't know exactly which AI tools they used. I'm guessing it's some form of Stable Diffusion or Deforum or Warp Fusion or one of those tools that are out there. This was done with a combination of visual effects artists and AI over the top of those visual effects. Now, supposedly this was intentionally designed to look unnerving. They wanted to give it that AI effect, and quite honestly, it's created great publicity around the show because a lot of people are talking about the fact that this intro was AI generated and making more people aware that there is a brand new Marvel show over on Disney Plus right now. So the marketing behind making this an AI generated video, in my opinion, was actually genius. And the creators of the intro wrote in an exclusive to The Hollywood Reporter that the opening that used AI cost no artist jobs. Method Studios clarifies reports that sparked a social media backlash stating AI tools complemented and assisted our creative teams. If I was the marketing person behind Secret Invasion, I probably would have personally been the one to leak the fact that we used AI to make the intro to stir up controversy, only to follow up with a report later that nobody lost their jobs and AI complemented what we created with visual effects, because all of that controversy leads to views. Now, speaking of controversy, this week it was reported that ChatGPT user account credentials were found on the dark web. ChatGPT users should be wary that their personal data might have been leaked online following the dump of more than 100,000 ChatGPT account credentials on the dark web. However, OpenAI did respond to this, saying that it was more like 26,802. The leaked accounts mostly came from the Asia Pacific region, and that it was actually due to malware that was installed on a ton of people's devices and not an actual breach of something at OpenAI. So OpenAI wasn't hacked, but somehow a lot of people installed something that essentially phished their data. So if you haven't been installing any weird shady software lately or downloading anything that you don't know where it came from,
obligatory shout out to the homie Kaiputer, who covers all this type of content, cybersecurity content and things of that nature. You should absolutely give them a follow. They will explain all these kind of things related to cybersecurity to you, and also make good recommendations on how to stay safe with what you download. One of the important things that I can share with you is you are putting yourself at great risk if you use any like APK that does not come off the App Store. Doesn't matter how bad you want it, it's going to be sussy as hell. We are tremendously advanced in our ability to to get malware and other programs of that type onto your devices. Be safe on the internet. Rule number 1.
You're probably in the clear, but it's always a good idea to change up your password from time to time. I want to circle back around to something that I talked about earlier this week from this company Illumin AI. I actually dubbed in additional footage from this company because I thought what they were making was so cool. And I wanted to show you another example of it just real quick because this stuff is just nerd heaven for me. Here's an image that was generated in Midjourney. Illumin AI then turned that image into this 3D world that we're seeing on the screen where you can move around and zoom in and zoom out of it. And then they were able to drop a character into this 3D scene and actually make the character wander around inside of this 3D world. This was originally a Midjourney image that we're looking at that was turned into the 3D world that a character could now run around in. Like, this to me is just so insanely cool that we're able to do stuff like this. And as of right now, this Instaverse tool from Illumin AI is actually free to play around with. So I actually demoed this a little bit more in my video from earlier this week. So if you haven't watched that one, check it out. The thumbnail of it looks like this. All right, finally, to wrap up this week's news, let's talk about the most bizarre thing that's going on the planet right now, where Mark Zuckerberg is ready to fight Elon Musk in a cage match. What? So that's right. Meta is actually planning on building a competitor to Twitter. Elon Musk has trolled him a little bit on Twitter about this, and it's all sort of escalated into Elon Musk tweeting that he's up for a cage match with Mark Zuckerberg. It further escalated because Mark Zuckerberg screenshotted the tweet saying I'm up for a cage match and then said, send me the location. Now on first view, you're probably thinking, this is all just like trolling and goofing off on Twitter. Well, it kind of isn't, because Mark Zuckerberg actually trains in jiu-jitsu and claims to train a little bit in MMA as well. And according to Dana White from the UFC, they are absolutely dead serious about making this happen. Now, this is a report from TMZ, so take that for what it's worth. But in an interview with TMZ on Thursday, White said he probably spent an hour and a half on the phone with both of the world's most high-profile tech billionaires and found out that neither of them was kidding about a proposed cage match stemming from a social media spat. They both said, yeah, we'll do it. They both want to do it. He said, Mark Zuckerberg hit me up first and said, is Elon serious? And I said, I don't know, let me ask him. So I asked him and he said, yeah, I'm dead serious. There's actually a non-0% chance we might see an actual cage match between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. Now that's gonna be interesting.
Okay, so I did not have billionaire cage match on my future dystopia bingo card. I understand and appreciate how ultimately like meaningless this all is, and there's a whole list of things that we should be paying attention to that are more important than this. And at the same time, I don't want to see any, like, you know, when they do the celebrity boxing matches and it's like, you know, like people wearing headgear and it's like gentle and just for show. I want to see creator clash. Like I want them to get into it. Like there will be some vicarious working class something that goes out if that happens. And my money's on Zuckerberg.
Anyway, that's all I got for you in the world of AI. When the week started, I thought, man, this is going to be a slow week. There's really nothing to talk about for Friday's news video. But by the time Thursday rolled around, it really ramped up. And I don't even know what happened on Friday yet, because I'm recording this on Thursday. So there could be new news that I haven't even reported on yet, but if there is, I'll report it in next Friday's video. Also, since I'm doing these Friday news videos on a regular basis now, I'm trying to come up with a clever name for what I should call them. I've been thinking about just going along with the name of the AI news you probably haven't heard of yet, because that seems to do well with the YouTube algorithm. But if you have ideas, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Hopefully you enjoy.
Thanks for that. I want to see this one. This is David Shapiro. And a couple of things to note. One is that David has leaned into an aesthetic here. I've seen it in a couple of videos. I don't know if this is a one-off or if he's going to do this, but, you know, again, I like where this is going. But yeah, you know, we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, David is still a work in progress. and like that. But I'm interested because these takes are going to be like globally related to AI rather than like Matt's commentary on tools that you can use. So this definitely could be helpful. Haven't watched the video, haven't pre-watched, so we're gonna find out together.
Hello everybody, David Shapiro here with a update. So we're gonna cover two things today real quick. The big thing is, I mentioned in a previous video, we need Gaia, Global AI Agency. And we're working towards that. And so I created a public repository of news and summaries, basically where I'm collecting evidence and news that is very encouraging because it's all moving in the right direction. We've got everything from the Future of Life Institute open letter to pause giant models, news out of the UK, the EU, which, yes, I know that the UK left the EU. I made a mistake of forgetting about Brexit in a previous video. The UN Secretary General talking about, yes, he's amenable to the idea of an international AI watchdog. The United States Senate, their hearing on AI. The EU AI Act. The US House of Representatives and Senate having now basically matched actions with words. So after the hearing, both the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate have introduced legislation or commissions or policies. So we'll go over all those in much greater detail in just a moment. But before we dive into that, I've been working on this thing. I had this idea for a long time, and it's basically we can use large language models like GPT because they are trained on so much text data. They're trained on data from around the globe. Granted, it is primarily English, so there's definitely some bias, cultural bias in there. However, that being said, it has read so much about the world that it knows more about religion, politics, psychology, culture, history than any one person. So as far as having the ability to take perspectives, it's actually pretty good. And so rather than walk you through the code, I'll just show you what I've got working so far. So basically what I have it do is actually first I need to make sure, no, that's fine. So basically what I have it do, what it does, anyways, is I have it synthesize a persona. And so this persona is a whole bunch of random stuff, like variables that it can pick to basically create a synthetic person. And I don't mean that in the manipulation way, but it has geographic origins, ethnicities, cultures, languages, political dispositions, different factors about the person, such as their physical health, their mental health, other habits, preferences, that sort of thing. And so basically what it does is to create a persona is it'll grab one of these variables or one option from each set of variables and then create a profile or a dossier in order to take the perspective of that person, and then it will talk through on a particular issue. And I picked UBI because I've been on a economics and UBI kick lately. And so I wanted to basically come up with a way of automatically understanding what the concerns that everyone is going to have could be, but not just elucidate or articulate the problems that they will have, or the concerns that they'll have over a policy like UBI, but how do we actually arrive at consensus? And consensus is not necessarily, so a lot of people have misconception about consensus. Consensus doesn't mean unanimous agreement. Consensus means that it gets to a point that is good enough that people will kind of stop fighting it. It's about compromise. And so anytime that there's been any kind of
yes, it depends on, again, what definitions of consensus you're using. Andrewism, if you don't know Andrewism, it's spelled Andrewism. on YouTube has some good videos on like consensus as a form of government, right? Like relating to like the idea of anarchism and, you know, stateless and these kind of things. And consensus exists in a lot of let's say like okay, so like Native Americans, Native or African cultures, where you have like a community basis for your for your system of governance, such as it is, like how you want to qualify that. It's not built necessarily on the idea of like voting, but it's where you do talk through the particular issues, and all sides get to be heard, and to an extent you do get like a universal agreement. Like it might be that you stop fighting about it, but there is an agreement inherent within the mode of behavior, right? I don't want to speak too much on it because, again, it's kind of outside, but this is my understanding given some things that I read and seen, and in particular the videos of Andrewism. I think that they do a good job, and also like conversations with Universal Discourse, who I hope is doing well, because they haven't been streaming in some time, and I hope they're doing well. So that, I think that, and this is why like my personal philosophy has gone to a consensus form of democracy. Like, I think that is, again, inherently the best way to make sure that all parties feel that they are heard. And also, like one of the things that Arun pointed out is that you can have a democracy that at the same time marginalizes certain groups, and because of their small numbers they are unable to be heard. And I feel like if we move towards a more of a consensus basis for this concept, we'll achieve better outcomes that don't do that. Like, we're always trying to maximize good outcomes and minimize bad outcomes, and that's where I'm currently at. So I recommend you look into Andrewism for more on that, because again, they really delve into it and they do a good job.
Contentious policy or legislation, even including the United States Constitution. Nobody was happy with it because they had to come to consensus in order to get something that everyone would tolerate, everyone would accept. So it wasn't perfect to anyone's mind, but it was something that they would all accept. And so the idea is, okay, let's take this random profile of a person so that we can get a global representation of all perspectives, regardless of how small they are. Because the thing is, when you look at some of these things like atheist, Islam, Christianity, Buddhist, right? Some of these are overrepresented in some areas, and some of them are underrepresented. Same thing for political leanings. I even include libertarians and anarchists and statists and communists and reactionaries and populists and nationalists and fascists. I don't know if fascism is in here. Fascism isn't in here. So fascist perspectives don't get represented, but nationalists do, so close enough. Authoritarians get represented. So the idea is that we can get a very well-rounded representation of all human perspectives, more or less. There's obviously going to be some flaws with this because it is the first example. But the idea is that you can get a very, very diverse set of perspectives on a particular issue. And then once you get those perspectives, you can then work through and figure out, okay, what kind of policy is this person most likely to accept? And so by then generating a whole bunch of potential policies, you can say, okay, well, let's look at the commonality between all of these and let's get really creative. So let me just go ahead and show you how this works.
Yeah, I want to see.
All right,
this.
so the first thing it does is it grabs a random persona. So you see where it's like, heavy social media user, they're West Asian, cultural background is West Asian, their geographic origin is from North Africa. So imagine a West Asian family in North Africa. They're a wealthy family, they're heavy social media user, so on and so forth. Okay, so I asked.
Yeah, I was talking about, what up, Arun? Our conversation from the other day, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, where we talked about how democracy has the at least potential to marginalize small groups, and that is, basically a negative mark on democracy. So I was talking about how my personal philosophy has moved more towards the idea of like consensus kind of democracy, and Andrewism does a really good job with their videos talking about that. That's what that was. So shout out, and hey, fuck it, shout out Arun.
Ask what would
I boomered the thing. Shout out Arun also. Arun out there doing the good stuff. Should definitely follow Arun. Like, again, like it's been great to watch your channel grow and your skill, with imparting the knowledge that you do. It's been great, and I wish you nothing but the best in your continued growth. Yeah, exactly. That's what it comes down to, and we need to always, my friend, always. We need to lean towards good outcomes and steer away from bad outcomes wherever they are, all the time. We can't just democracy is good enough for now while we work on these other issues. Basically means that we will never come back to this issue. So let's keep it fresh in the mind as how we want to proceed forward.
This person think about UBI, and because ChatGPT is so heavily trained to be a helpful assistant, I couldn't get ChatGPT to take that perspective, but what I could do is say advocate zealously on behalf of this person, and that got really good results. So let's see. As an advocate for this persona, I would say that they might have mixed feelings about UBI. On one hand, they are wealthy and underemployed, which might lead them to see UBI as let's see, where did it go? Hang on. Okay, it's saved. Sorry. Let's see, unnecessary for themselves and potentially harmful to their financial status if it results in higher taxes. They also might be concerned about the potential for UBI to discourage work and productivity, given their own success and wealth-oriented aspirations. On the other hand, their experience with financial stress and their social concerns might make them sympathetic to the idea of UBI as a means of reducing poverty and inequality. However, their nationalist political affiliation might make them more inclined to support policies that prioritize the needs and interests of their own country and its citizens, which could include skepticism towards UBI if they perceive it as benefiting outsiders as a form of globalist policy. So you see, it has a very nuanced way of saying, okay, this person has...
Okay, so if this does this, right, I think that this is an amazing tool, especially for what I talk about with trying to understand why, like, especially in terms of your, like, what you might perceive as your ideological opponents, different people within the spaces, because this allows you to disconnect their feelings from the person themselves, right? Like, Elon pisses me off. So, like, there will be issues I have with dealing directly with Elon because he pisses me off in that fashion. But if I can create this, which might reflect his background and all those kind of things, in order to understand the way that he perceives the world and what he advocates for, it might make it easier to do that kind of thing, presenting it as a generic persona. If this is effective, if this actually does a good job of doing those things, it's a tool both with good use for generating a random person as might exist in the world, but also that if you can check the boxes, you might be able to, kind of fine tune the model to represent that kind of person. So you could have the discussion that you might want to have without the adversarial nature that might go along with that, especially if you were to do it, in certain spaces. It's not a debate because it's text on a screen presented by, the ChatGPT. I like this a lot, potentially. Like, my understanding of what I'm seeing, I like it a lot.
Lots of different beliefs, and it's pretty complex. Let's see. Okay, so given their wealth-oriented aspirations, nationalist political affiliation, and their experience with financial stress, they might resonate with a fiscal policy or UBI implementation that is designed to stimulate economic growth and productivity, while also addressing social inequality within their own country. For instance, they might support a UBI program that is funded through progressive taxation, where the wealthy pay a higher percentage of their income taxes. This would align with their social concerns and their belief in the importance of addressing inequality. However, they would likely want assurances that this would not unduly burden them or negatively impact their own financial status. They might also resonate with a UBI program that includes work incentives or requirements to address their concerns about discouraging work and productivity. For instance, they might support a UBI that is conditional on recipients engaging in some kind of work, education, or community service. So this is a theme that keeps emerging because I've run this experiment a few times. I don't know if that's the underlying training of ChatGPT or if it's just this is the most logical way forward, where basically either you have a requirement or an incentive or reward. So basically, like, everyone gets a baseline UBI, but if you volunteer, you get more UBI, right? It's like kind of adjusting your tax returns here in America. Okay, so finally, given their nationalist policy,
and I could see that making a certain amount of sense as like a way, especially a way to satisfy people who feel this way, satisfy, the expressions that David Shapiro has had, is like the idea of not wanting to or the idea of wanting to incentivize, additional labor and things like that. And you can qualify that in a bunch of different ways, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be go work at the factory in order to get UBI. It shouldn't be that way, right? Like my line starts at we have satisfied the material conditions, the basic conditions required for existence, right? Food, housing, clothing, medical, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then to get some additional thing, then exchanging that at least in the in the near term, a direct reflection of something that you do, like the example where we talked about with the the community center, right? And the community center has the tool rental. And with the tool rental, you can also talk about, like, I need these tools to do plumbing in my house. And then there's the guy within your community, or there's the person within your community who might know about plumbing. That person comes along to teach you and provide you with that education and additional set of hands and experience, which is valuable when you're doing plumbing. And that could also be something where they could reflect that as, hey, I did this, so then they get an additional bonus. I'm not against that as an idea, like as long as we're meeting the initial and then you have a way to expand on that, that I think is a way that you could financially incentivize that kind of thing. That works for me.
Policy. They want to UBI that prioritizes the needs and interests of their own country's citizens. So this could be something like a tax break if you buy local, or any number of ways. So then I ask it to say, all right, come up with a policy that this person might like. And so in this case, it said the national prosperity dividend, which that sounds rather authoritarian, but okay, we'll go with it. So the NPD, which that's also the acronym for narcissistic personality disorder. Oh boy. Maybe let's workshop that before we go live with it. Anyways, so the NPD is a form of universal basic income that is designed to stimulate economic growth, reduce social inequality, and prioritize the needs and interests. Okay, so you get that. So it's predicated on their engaging in some form of work, education, or community service, part-time work, vocational training, higher ed, so on and so forth. You know, actually, like that particular thing, because this is a recurring theme, I'm not certain that that's actually a bad idea, where like you incentivize people to continue to better themselves, even if it's a small carrot, like, you know, hey, if you're going to higher education, even if you know the college degree you're getting might not ever do anything, you get an extra $500 a month. You will at least be a better informed citizen and a better civic participant. Who knows? I don't know. Incentivize the behavior you want to see. Oh, here we go. The NPD would also include a patriotic bonus. Ooh, yikes. An additional payment for those who contribute significantly to the country's economy, culture, or society. Okay, I wouldn't call it a patriotic bonus. That's a little totalitarian, but I get the idea. So this would include entrepreneurs, artists, scientists, and community leaders. So actually, I think Ireland already has something like this, where basically if you are a professional artist or author or whatever, a creative type, you get a stipend. I don't know what they call it in Ireland, but there is precedent for this being a thing. So like if you're a content creator or a cultural commentator or whatever, you could get a little bit an additional stipend. So all right, so there you have it. And then if we run it again, so let me do a clear screen. If we run it again, let's see, we get a young adult who's wealthy from Eastern Europe, whose culture is indigenous South American. Interesting. They like gaming. They speak Spanish. That makes sense if they're from South America. They do not care about the community, and they are a very fragile person. They're an angry, fragile person who is educated. They've been very experienced. They had a good childhood. They've had a good life experience. They're presently single. They're a progressive atheist. Yeah, this actually sounds... and they're worried about their career. Interesting. Okay, so let's see. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you like I did the first one. You get the idea. But so you see how it takes into account, like the last one, they were nationalist and blah, blah, blah. And this one is progressive. Given their moderate intolerance, they might prefer a UBI that includes some form of means testing. Means testing keeps coming up as well. Let's see. Skeptical about whether everyone...
Adamantly against mean testing. No.
Deserves UBI. Ouch. There's some people on Reddit that this sounds like. And that's not to trash people on Reddit. I actually learned a lot from some people on Reddit. But yeah, so UBI to reduce overconsumption and promote more sustainable lifestyles. Yeah, so this actually keeps coming up as well, where for some people, means testing, sustainability. So basically, like, you might get an additional UBI bonus if you live sustainably or, whatever. So basically, like, discourage overconsumption. That's a trend that keeps coming up. So, okay. The Progressive Environmental UBI, the PUEB, the PB, would be funded primarily through a progressive tax system where the wealthiest individuals, blah, blah, blah. I haven't seen too much in terms of funding. One of them did say fund it through carbon taxes, which I thought was an interesting way, is you partially fund it through that. To align with their environmentalist values would also, here it is, carbon tax. Okay, so these are some ideas that keep coming up. Again, I think
needs-based support. Do you need water? Do you need food, water, shelter, energy, and various costs of living? Does the government have the means of providing these things? This is the only means test I care about. Exactly. Like, again, there is a baseline where all the needs are met. The needs, right? Like, and internet is a need in the future, right? Like, if you don't think it is, then we need to have a discussion for me to explain what that baseline doesn't have to do with life as it existed in 1066. It has to do with how you live in the current framework. That's baseline. How do you live in the current framework? And you cannot live in the current framework, at least here in the United States, without internet. And the rest of the world is also going to be that way, right? We did the article from the vice president of Ghana, who is using data and automation in order to move his country to the head of that line. There will be no place on the world, unless it probably places you can like go if you don't want to participate in the internet portion of the world or whatever. But for the majority of people, internet is a need, right? It is a baseline need. It is going to be how you handle all your business, even more so than it is today. Food, water, shelter, energy, healthcare, all these different kind of things. All those are baseline. Anything else above that baseline, we can discuss about incentive programs that provide additional things for giving back to, community, society, whatever word you want to put in there, that kind of stuff. With furthering your own education, educating of others. It could be done to help incentivize people who handle childcare and like that, while other people go off and do other things. Before we get to some future point where people do stuff just based on the idea of community and interrelational natures and things like that, we can definitely set up a practical system that incentivizes that kind of behavior. There should be no issue there from anyone.
That the underlying model has a little bit of bias here. It would be interesting to see if there is a future version of GPT that is not already pre-trained to be kind of on board with some of these ideas. Because one thing that has come up is like, if you have someone who is just adamantly opposed to it, it doesn't say like this person will never agree to this under any circumstances. It works really hard to try and find something that they might agree with. So anyways, this is all saved out to, it's saved out into the UBI folder as a YAML document. So it basically just saves the conversation as a whole. I think, yeah, it even includes the system message, because the system message includes the persona. And the first one, it was hilarious. It was a radically intolerant feminist who is a Scientologist, which is just like, wow. This was really interesting as it tried to figure out how to appease a very dogmatic person. So anyways, this is a work in progress. I don't know where it's going exactly. But the idea is that maybe you could use it for policy research. Maybe you could use it for, I've been thinking about it for a long time, but I had some inspiration after talking to the Gato community about the democratic inputs to AI, because the idea of using a chatbot to extract information from a real person is one thing. But then I was like, the model already has a tremendous amount of information. So why don't we just bootstrap it and ask the model to kind of think through this? So this is essentially a tree of thought, but each branch of the tree is a different persona. And then each of those branches has 3 sub-branches where I ask it those 3 questions like, what do you think this person will think about UBI? What kind of fiscal policy do you think would resonate? And then finally, given the persona and their disposition, can you creatively conjure up a policy that has a high chance of reaching consensus with this person? So it's, basically you can create an arbitrary number of branches, and then as those branches span out and you get all the leaves, you gather the leaves together and see what fits. Okay, anyways, so you're up to date on that project.
And that would be another, because of the doing it via, the LLM and things of that nature, you are contributing to the, to the thing that you could analyze. So, like, once you establish that this does what you want it to do, and that is sufficiently representative of actual human beings, then yeah, you could use it to generate what policy is going to, satisfy these people. How can we find consensus in this model? And I like that better than polling data. If I had to compare something that would kind of be like apples and apples. So I'm a fan. I want more of this.
Project said, let's dive back into the Gaia initiative, the global AI agencies. So I've been watching the news and I realize that the number of things that are piling up that make me feel good, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that are skeptical of anything to do with government or corporations. And for those people, I empathize with you. Growing up, I was more like that, where I was super skeptical of all trappings of power. And certainly my friends were very like disestablishmentarianism and anarcho-libertarian, whatever. But none of them ever did anything with it. So this is the world we live in. We live in a world with corporations and governments and stuff. And yes, all power needs to be scrutinized. Healthy skepticism is absolutely fine. That is part of the democratic process. That being said, if you're dogmatically against all forms of power, well, I mean, wish in one hand and, you know what to do with the other one. See which one fills up first. So anyways, I have been keeping track of all this stuff because I see the currents and the trends, and it is actually very, very encouraging to me. So I've got it all in chronological order. So first was the Future of Life Institute published their open letter, it was signed by everyone, including Elon Musk and yada, yada, yada. What I didn't realize was that it actually came with a policy paper. And so this policy paper, it's only 14 pages, and it has 7 policy recommendations. So this came out in, April 12th. I think I might have that wrong. The pause, the big pause. So the paper was published March 22nd. The policy recommendations came out a few days later, a couple weeks later.
Okay.
So what I did was I took all that and then I made a very brief summary of the whole thing right here. So you can click on the link and see it, but it's a few basic things: mandate robust third-party auditing, regulate organizations' access to computational power, establish capable AI agencies at the national level.
So one of the things around this and around other things of like regulate organizations' access to computational power by requiring a comprehensive risk assessment before granting access to large amounts of compute and monitoring the use of compute in data centers. There is an issue that I will give Mark and Lex credit for bringing up is how do you enforce that, and what does that look like? Right? Like, if I go ahead and I, access large amounts of compute, do you send the FBI to come take my stuff with the stormtroopers and the black helicopters? Like, that is right, but how do you prevent it from happening if somebody doesn't go along with what you're doing, right? Yeah, no, I mean, I understand how you could track it. What I'm talking about is how would you, right, but that is like, I love scammers, the messages that I get. So what, okay, cut off their power. What if I run my compute off my own private renewables? I have solar panels. Now what? Right? Like, eventually there comes a point where you have to engage in some sort of authoritarian type move, which is, I have a problem with that. I right there, that is an authoritarian move, right? Like, and when we start talking about authoritarianism, it's fine when my guy does it, but when somebody not my guy wants to do it, then I have a problem. You know what I mean? I'm not saying we have to come up with a solution in these 5 minutes. I'm just saying it's something to keep in mind, right? As part of healthy skepticism and media literacy and the things that go along with that, and assessing why people feel the way they do, it's important to so what would this look like if it did go bad? Like, what is the alternative? Yeah, and I also understand that to an extent, if I don't pay my electric bill, they turn off my power as it is. So, there's a certain level of authoritarianism baked into a lot of the things that we do right now. We're trying to find, a better future with less authoritarianism, and more agency, right? I like agency as opposed to concepts of freedom and liberty. I think agency is better in that regard. But again, still open to, workshopping it. We talk about taxing the top earners. We should be taxing the most compute used to replace jobs. That's another option.
Establish liability for AI-caused harm, introduce measures to prevent and track AI model leaks, expand AI technical safety research, and develop standards for identifying and managing AI-generated content. Okay, sure, whatever. It's all pretty boilerplate in the grand scheme of things. So that came out March, April.
One thing I know about billionaires, old lobster, is they do not pay for their flops.
March 29th, the UK did this jobby, which I haven't had a chance to summarize yet. But basically, the idea is a pro-innovation AI regulatory framework, et cetera, et cetera. Again, you see how long this thing is.
And
that's why it takes a little bit of doing to summarize with GPT API calls. So anyways, they call for a regulatory sandbox, which so does the EU AI Act also calls for regulatory sandboxes. So if you don't know, a regulatory sandbox is basically you create a safe space where you can experiment with AI, that is a little bit more permissive. So, and this is very often the case. So, for instance, one of the most familiar ones is if you're doing medical research, for instance, you're allowed to use substances that are otherwise illegal. You just have to go through approval processes. It's not quite the same, but the idea is that people have been able to experiment with THC and LSD and psilocybin, even though it's still a Schedule II drug or whatever in the United States. You have to be approved to do so. Likewise, if you are an approved entity, the idea of a regulatory sandbox is that you can still do whatever science you need to do as long as you do so safely. But also one thing about these pro-innovation things is, and this is a common theme that I actually noticed, which is why I was inspired to do this. So the UK and the United States have all focused on protecting innovation and accelerating innovation, in fact. So then in early May, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that he's amenable to the idea of the IAEA for AI, which also OpenAI, I forgot to add that, but OpenAI basically published a blog calling for the same thing. Then a few days later, the United States Senate hearing on AI. This was the one with Sam Altman and Christina Montgomery and Gary Marcus. This was almost a 3-hour talk. And I took the transcript of that and I summarized it here. So the high-level summary, basically just says, here's the key points that they discussed. And then I break each one of those down further.
And again, this is like when he says that he got the summary, this is him using ChatGPT to create the summary. Like, this is what I'm talking about for you to use AI in whatever capacity you can. This is a great example of doing that. Like, take this 3 hours that I'm not going to be able to watch all of, and I might not even be able to, like, intake all of because of the nature of how real life functions, and present it to me like, give me the high points, that kind of thing. Then what I could do is I could insert this into one of those, those vocal models and have this read to me, right? Like while I'm doing another activity, like my own personal podcast summarizing that kind of thing.
So it takes you, 20 minutes to read this instead of 3 hours. It's pretty straightforward. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of questions. I watched pretty much the entire hearing. But clearly the United States government was listening. And I wonder if this whole thing was just an orchestrated series of events or not. But anyways, a month later, the EU AI Act.
I literally made that plugin for Chrome, but I'm using my API key, and I don't want to pay for others to use it. They are similar for free, though. This is a great use of that kind of thing, right? Like, I want more of this, this going on. Tomorrow is the day I start on my own personal box over here, or at least I take the next step. I believe in me too, old lobster, and I appreciate you.
Was proposed. I don't think it's been adopted or ratified or anything. Someone explained in the comments that there's still quite a process to go through. They've got to get feedback. But then more recently, in just the last couple days, the United States House of Representatives by Representative Ted Lieu and a few others introduced a bipartisan commission. Basically, it's an AI commission. I summarized it here. It's pretty, I didn't summarize it here. I copied the text here because their PDF was garbage. Seriously, like, this is the United States. You can pay someone who knows how to make a PDF. Good Lord. So anyways, it's relatively straightforward. Mostly this is just saying, like, let's appoint a panel.
Yeah. No, like, same page. I can't fail if I don't start. Yeah, that, Oh, let me think about it for one more day. Like, I'm so close to really, like, I'll that kind of thing. And at a certain point, you just have to move forward
to come up with policy recommendations. It's not really, they're not going to do anything. Basically, it's going to produce 3 reports. And so this is going to recommend what the United States Congress does for AI. Okay, great. Congressional commission, they're interested in getting more information, which means that they're going to solicit experts. So one thing that I thought was most interesting was the panel, is that they want to have members of the commission shall have a demonstrated background in at least one of the following: computer science or AI specifically, civil society, including constitutional rights, civil liberties, ethics, and the creative community. Industry and workforce, and then government, including national security. So when you get these kinds of people in a room together, it's not just engineers and not just data scientists. This is going to be people that are in political science, civil rights, civil liberties, industry insiders, and then finally national security experts. So this is going to be a pretty comprehensive set of recommendations, and I'm actually pretty happy to see that Ted Lieu is leading that. And Ted Lieu is where is he? Is he the Los Angeles County? So it's not surprising that California bro is going to be figuring that out. Okay, and then finally, most recently, was just a couple days ago, Senator Chuck Schumer announced the SAFE framework at the CSIS, which is really interesting. And I don't know if this has been ratified yet or anything. I haven't been able to find the actual text of the idea, but there is a one-pager out there somewhere that summarizes it very succinctly. But I took the transcript from this and I summarized the talk here. So basically, it comes down to four major components: security, which basically talks about national security above all else, but also corporate security and privacy of citizens; accountability, which talks about how do you it's actually pretty similar to the EU thing where I forgot to mention this for the EU AI Act. The primary thing that the EU AI Act does is it bans outright social credit systems and surveillance, like basically Big Brother. Bans Big Brother stuff. And so this is what the security and accountability does. An interesting part of this.
Security. The framework emphasizes the need for security measures to protect against the potential misuse of AI technology by foreign adversaries or domestic groups. It recognizes the risk posed by AI in areas such as national security, privacy in the workforce. And the goal is to establish guardrails that prevent the illicit use of AI and protect American interests. Accountability. The framework calls for accountability in the development and deployment of AI systems. It aims to prevent the exploitation of individuals, such as tracking movements, targeting vulnerable populations, or promoting biased practices. It also emphasizes the importance of protecting intellectual property rights and ensuring fair compensation for content creators. Yeah, it's a little. It doesn't inspire me with like great confidence kind of thing, but I could see it being a framework for good law. We shall see.
Was the foundations aspect of the framework. So basically, one of the key things of Chuck Schumer's framework is to protect the foundations of democracy. So I was talking with my wife about this, and she suspects that this was a direct reaction to the January 6th attempted insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. When people are breaking into, and keep in mind that many members of Congress were directly in danger. And so we suspect, we being my wife and I, we suspect that this is actually basically the Congress, House of Representatives and senators, they didn't take social media seriously. And then, Facebook happened with Cambridge Analytica. I don't think it's controversial to say that Facebook and other social media companies directly contributed to the widespread abuses of misinformation, but also just coordination of violence. It's that simple. And so they learned their lesson by not taking social media seriously, and now they're taking artificial intelligence very seriously. So on a cynical note, this is basically the establishment wanting to protect the establishment and the status quo. That is a pretty cynical take. That doesn't mean that it's the only thing, because I actually listened to all of Chuck Schumer's talk, and he had a very clear, words matter. He had a very clear-eyed understanding of what's coming. He even talked about the possibility of jobs dislocation. He likened it to globalization and offshoring, because he said, yes, globalization and offshoring did actually help the economy because it, allowed us to lower the prices of goods and services. But at the same time, millions of Americans lost their job. And so the implication there was that the United States government did not do a good enough job to protect Americans while we were rapidly offshoring in the 90s and 2000s.
What up, Devil? And this is why, like, even though David Shapiro and I disagree on some fundamental points, I feel like we're not that far off that we couldn't have a good discussion. I definitely, make sure you hit me up, and like that. Any of you, if you're on Blue Sky, I am now on Blue Sky, and so hit me up on that. I don't have one of those, like, I'm leaving Twitter at this point in time. I said I was going to be there to turn out the lights and put up the chairs. I will. Jesus Christ, I've been friggin' working. Calm your tits. But, like, I will also be expanding into Blue Sky tentatively while I see what Blue Sky looks like in that regard. The other thing, in the Discord, if you are not on Blue Sky and you wish to be on Blue Sky, there is a channel for you to post your interest, your name in there, that once I have invite codes available, I will provide them to you. That is my giving back to you as being a member of the community, and like that. So, yes, Devil, I will follow you back after stream.
And then finally, explainability. Some people commented that Chuck Schumer doesn't really seem to understand how AI works, because you can't just, it's not a database that you can, like, say, oh, this is where it got the data from. That being said, I think that these commissions will figure out, that you, while you can't look at the model.
I would say that there are, like, what? There's 100 senators and like 400 and some odd, I don't have the number offhand, but 400 and some odd representatives, plus, the executive branch, and then all the different functionaries who circle around those people. I would say comfortably 5% or less understand AI in any capacity. This is a problem. I hope that things like this indicate future solutions, but the first thing that I thought of when I saw that Chuck Schumer introduced this safe innovation framework for AI policy, he had nothing to do with this. It was given to him. There is no, by no stretch of the imagination, did he put this together. I have personally met Chuck Schumer in the flesh, right? I understand what kind of creature Chuck Schumer is. He is a political animal, and Chuck Schumer's main interests are Chuck Schumer, right? By any metric. And he does not understand AI. There's no way. Zero chance.
Model, and then for what was in it, you can look at the training data. So what I suspect is that there's going to be very soon open source standards on training data. So basically, in order to be a licensed and approved and publicly available model, the underpinning training data will have to be publicly available, or at least inspected. He did talk about innovation first as well. So this is a common theme that's emerging, at least in Britain and America. The EU is less concerned about innovation. They're more concerned about fundamental civil rights.
100%. Like, in, yeah, 100%. Like, Chuck Schumer is capable of having good people around him. Chuck Schumer doesn't understand AI. And I think that there's got to be a way to explain it to these people in some way that they can understand, right? Like, fuck, we just did the thing about the UBI. Let's get ChatGPT to write us an explanation of how we can explain ChatGPT or AI to all these individual people, like based on whatever is available data on that individual. Then you can tailor make the AI description letter for that senator, representative, Joe Biden, what have you. You can put something together so that they, do the metaphors for them to understand. Because we need something. Goddamn.
And foundational human rights, which is good. Like I would actually like that. But as an individual nation, they are highly, highly focused on focusing on innovation first, and then safety, rights, accountability, and stuff. So it's basically, here's the roadmap of how to innovate safely and fast and quickly. And the idea is there are geopolitical competitions happening. Vladimir Putin said, I think it was 2021, the nation that solves artificial intelligence will own, the next century. And it's probably going to be a lot longer than that. Russia, unfortunately for them, does not have the economy or they have brain drain, so they're not going to be a participant in artificial intelligence. It's basically going to come down to America versus China versus the EU. But the EU is more ideologically aligned with America and vice versa. So it'll basically come down to East versus West, which is basically the same idea of World War II and the Cold War, which was Western ideology versus Eastern ideology. So this is what the geopolitical conflict is shaping up to be for the next century. Yay! Repeat of the 20th century. Let's hope that it's not as bloody. And I say that flippantly, but I am dead serious because the stakes are very, very high here, which is why I call this the Gaia Initiative, because Gaia is Greek for Earth or Mother Earth. And also Gaia was the goddess of monsters too. So on the topic of Moloch and Shoggoth and all those other things, I think that Gaia is a really appropriate name. So anyways, this is out here. It's just under github.com/DaveShop/Gaia Initiative. I will update this as interesting news comes out. I might forget about it for a while. I tend to do that. But it's up there, and I find all this news very encouraging. So thanks for watching. I hope you got a lot out of it. Cheers.
And same. Thank you for watching, and I hope you got a lot out of it. I now have a bunch of stuff to do, including eating, and I'm like super offended by the concept of linear time and would like that not to be the case anymore, but here we are, Pismo Beach, and all the clams that we can eat. And that is just the nature of how it works. I think I'm going to drop you off with David. What up, Jaina? You're just in time for the raid. The bot will be up if you want to know. It did. It always does. You guys are great. It's a pleasure to be here. And like that. Sub goal, doing the thing. Feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed the content. If you're new here and you haven't hit follow, smack that follow button for more breaking and entering. All that good stuff. I will be back Wednesday again. We're going to be doing a stream from 5 to 7, and then we're going to transition right into the Twitter space to talk about AI, futurology, and transhumanism with Zero, and that should be interesting all the way around. Yeah, that's about it. I appreciate you all. Don't forget to be in the Discord and follow me on all the socials and do all the other stuff. Also, drink some water, eat some food, take your meds if you forgot. It happens. And in the meantime, Shoggy loves you. So do I.
The potential and the peril here are huge.